Hello everyone, and welcome to the Fictional Vortex. So we are back with an interesting movie on what if Naruto was the firstborn son of Heaven Goddess and fall in love with Artemis and Amaterasu. But before we start, I just want to remind you to please subscribe to my channel and hit the like button if you enjoy my content. Let's start the story. Chapter 1. Awakening Light. Golden light erupted from Naruto's fingertips, scattering across the weathered floorboards like liquid sunshine. He stumbled backward, clenching his fist to stem the flow, but the ions merely seeped through his knuckles, casting bizarre shadows across the tiny fishing shack he called home. 20 years of life, and still he couldn't control these episodes. Damn it, he hissed through gritted teeth, plunging his hand into a bucket of seawater. Steam rose as the light dissipated, leaving only the lingering scent of ozone and salt. These outbursts had grown more frequent, 3 this week alone. The villagers of Mizuhama had long whispered about the orphan with strange abilities, but lately their whispers had turned to fearful glances. Dawn broke across the eastern horizon, painting the sea copper and gold. Naruto wrapped strips of cloth around his palms, a futile precaution, but one that made the villagers less anxious, and stepped outside. The coastal air filled his lungs, carrying the scent of brine and the promise of storms. Gulls wheeled overhead, their cries echoing across the crescent bay where fishing vessels bobbed against wooden docks. Uzumaki, you're late, barked Takeshi, the grizzled captain of the Kajiki_. His weather-beaten face creased with familiar disapproval as Naruto approached the harbor. The tide waits for no man, especially not strange ones. Apologies, Captain, Naruto replied, hefting a coil of rope over his shoulder. He'd learned long ago that arguments only fueled suspicion. Despite his unnatural strength and inexplicable episodes, he'd carved out a precarious existence in Mizuhama through persistence and reliability. The sea, at least, passed no judgment. The Kajiki_ pushed out from harbor as morning mist clung to the water's surface. 6 men worked in practiced harmony, hauling nets, adjusting sails, reading currents. Naruto took his position at the bow, scanning the waters with eyes that somehow perceived more than others. He could sense the schools of fish swimming beneath them, their silver bodies creating patterns of energy he couldn't explain but instinctively understood. Starboard, about 300 yards, he called, pointing toward an unremarkable patch of ocean. Takeshi hesitated only briefly before adjusting course. Despite their superstitions, the crew had learned to trust Naruto's uncanny ability to find fish. "How do you always know?" asked Kenji, the youngest crewman at barely 16. Unlike the others, he regarded Naruto with fascination rather than suspicion. Naruto shrugged, unwilling to admit he saw glimmering threads of energy connecting all living things. Lucky guess. The morning progressed with a bountiful catch, the nets straining with mackerel and tuna. Naruto worked tirelessly, his wrapped hands concealing occasional flickers of light. The crew maintained their distance, but the rhythm of the sea created a temporary harmony, until the sky darkened without warning. Storm clouds shouldn't move that fast. Naruto felt it first, an unnatural chill that had nothing to do with weather. The threads of energy surrounding them dimmed, as though something was absorbing the very life from the air. A pressure built behind his eyes, familiar precursor to one of his episodes. "Captain," he started, but his warning died as the first shadow erupted from the water. It resembled no creature Naruto had ever seen, a writhing mass of darkness that seemed to bend light around it. Elongated limbs reached for the boat as more shapes emerged from the depths surrounding the Kajiki_ in a circle of undulating shadows. The crew froze in terror as the nearest creature slithered over the gunwale. Its form shifted constantly, but its intent was unmistakable as it lunged toward Kenji. Naruto moved without thought, his body intercepted the shadow, and the contact triggered what he'd spent years trying to prevent. Golden light erupted from his entire form, no longer just arcs but a radiant explosion that engulfed the deck. The shadow creature screeched, a sound like glass shattering underwater. As the light touched it, its form disintegrating into particles that scattered across the waves. "What in all hells?" Takeshi's voice cracked with fear, but Naruto couldn't spare him a glance. More shadows converged on the vessel, drawn to his light like moths to flame. For the first time in his life, Naruto stopped fighting the power within him. He surrendered to the burning energy that had always threatened to consume him, and it responded with frightening eagerness. Light poured from his body in waves, forming intricate patterns that seemed almost like calligraphy in the air. Where these patterns touched the shadow creatures, they dissolved, but more kept coming. "Get back to shore," Naruto shouted, his voice resonating with unfamiliar harmonics. He felt different, stronger, more focused, as though finally using his power properly had unlocked something dormant within him. The crew needed no encouragement. They scrambled to turn the boat as Naruto positioned himself at the stern, becoming a lighthouse of golden energy that kept the shadows at bay. Each pulse of light drained him, but he maintained the barrier until the shoreline came into view. As they approached the harbor, Naruto's heart sank. Mizuhama was under attack. Shadow creatures slithered through streets and over rooftops, their amorphous forms absorbing light from everything they touched. Villagers fled screaming, but many had already fallen, their bodies unnaturally still where the shadows had passed. "What have you brought upon us, demon?" Takeshi snarled, drawing a fishing knife. "This isn't my doing," Naruto protested, though doubt gnawed at him. Had his presence somehow attracted these creatures? "I can fight them. Get everyone to the shrine on the hilltop." Before Takeshi could respond, an arrow of silver light streaked from the shore, impaling the nearest shadow creature. The entity convulsed before dissolving, and Naruto turned to see a figure standing on the dock, a woman unlike any he had ever encountered. She stood with unnatural stillness, silver bow drawn and ready. Auburn hair cascaded down her back, adorned with a circlet that caught non-existent moonlight. Her tunic and leggings seemed to shimmer between silver and forest green, and her eyes, ancient, calculating eyes, fixed on Naruto with an intensity that made his newfound power flicker. "Get these mortals to safety," she commanded, her accent strange but words perfectly clear. Another arrow materialized between her fingers, drawn and released in one fluid motion. "You, light bearer, we have work to do." Without waiting for response, she leapt into the village, moving with impossible grace. Shish! Addo creatures recoiled from her approach, but her arrows could only dispatch one at a time. Naruto hesitated only briefly before following. "Who are you?" he called, channeling light through his Han-DS to drive back shadows surrounding a family cowering against a wall. "Artemis," she replied simply, as though the name should mean everything. "These Skia should not be here in the mortal realm. Something has torn the veil." Naruto had no idea what she meant, but the immediate threat demanded attention. He guided the family toward the harbor, where villagers were boarding boats or fleeing uphill. "The shadows are drawn to your light," Artemis observed, suddenly beside him though he hadn't seen her move. "Interesting. Most interesting. Is that supposed to help?" Naruto snapped, frustrated, ion and fear making his light pulse erratically. A ghost of a smile touched her lips. "Knowledge always helps, mortal. Or perhaps, not entirely mortal." Her eyes narrowed as she studied him. "What are you?" Before he could answer, not that he had one, a shadow larger than the others rose from the center of the village. Unlike its smaller counterparts, this entity had definite form, a humanoid shape with a crown of twisted horns. Its eyes fixed on Naruto with unmistakable recognition. "The prince awakens," it hissed, voice like rustling paper. "The empress will be most displeased." Artemis cursed in a language Naruto didn't recognize. "Lieutenant of the Void, we must leave immediately." "I'm not abandoning my village," Naruto protested, though the larger shadow creature filled him with instinctive dread. "Your village is already lost," Artemis said, not unkindly. "And if that creature captures you, much more will be lost. Come, there is a sacred place nearby where we can regroup." She was right about the village. Already, more than half the buildings stood empty or destroyed, shadows swarming over everything. The lieutenant approached with measured steps, smaller shadows coalescing around it like a living cloak. "I don't even know what's happening," Naruto said, backing away despite himself. Artemis knocked another arrow. "You're happening. Your awakening has stirred forces long dormant. Now run while I cover our retreat." Naruto obeyed, fleeing toward the forested hills behind the village with Artemis close behind. The lieutenant pursued, but slower, its attention divided by the remaining villagers. Guilt threatened to overwhelm Naruto, but survival instinct kept him moving. They entered the forest at a dead sprint, Artemis navigating the underbrush without disturbing a single leaf. Naruto crashed along behind her, golden light occasionally bursting from him unbidden. After what felt like hours but couldn't have been more than 20 minutes, Artemis stopped abruptly. "Here," she said, gesturing to what appeared to be a solid rock face covered in moss and vines. "The entrance is concealed." "Entrance to what?" Naruto panted, leaning against a tree. His body ached from channeling so much energy, a sensation he'd never experienced before. Artemis didn't answer. Instead, she placed her palm against the rock and whispered words that seemed to bend around Naruto's ears. Refusing to be understood, the stone shimmered, and a narrow opening appeared, a pathway into darkness. "Quickly," she urged, "your light will draw them, and even hallowed ground has limits." Naruto hesitated only briefly before following her into the passage. Cool air enveloped them as the entrance sealed itself, plunging them into darkness immediately dispelled by the soft glow emanating from his skin. The passage widened into a circular chamber that took Naruto's breath away. It was clearly a temple of some kind, but unlike anything in Mizuhama or the surrounding regions. The architecture seemed to blend elements from different cultures, columns reminiscent of ancient Greece, intricate wooden frameworks like the grandest shrines of the East, stone carvings that resembled nothing he'd seen before. Most striking were the murals covering the walls and domed ceiling. Painted in pigments that still retained vibrant color despite obvious age, they depicted scenes of incredible beauty and terrible conflict. Gods and goddesses from various pantheons, some recognizable from stories, others completely unfamiliar, engaged in what appeared to be a cosmic war. Above them all, a radiant female figure extended her hands, light streaming from her fingers as she created or perhaps restored order. "What is this place?" Naruto breathed, turning slowly to take in the entire chamber. "A Nexus temple," Artemis replied, setting down her bow. "One of the few places where multiple pantheons are honored equally. They were built during the last Great Accord, before." She trailed off, studying his face. "You truly don't know, do you?" "Know what?" Frustration crept into his voice. "I've spent my entire life trying to hide these abilities. I don't know why I have them. Or why shadow monsters just destroyed my village." Artemis approached one of the murals, gesturing for Naruto to join her. "Look at this figure here," she said, pointing to a smaller image beside the radiant woman. The painting showed a male figure with golden hair, light emanating from his hands as he stood between warring factions. "The resemblance is remarkable." Naruto stared at the ancient image, unnerved by the similarities, not just in the golden energy, but in the facial structure, even the spiky hair that had always marked him as different in Mizuhama. "That's not possible," he whispered. "This temple must be centuries old." "Millennia," Artemis corrected. "And yet here you stand, channeling celestial light through mortal flesh." She circled him slowly, assessing. "The prophesied son of the heaven goddess. Hidden among mortals all this time. The timing is troubling." Naruto shook his head, overwhelmed. "I'm an orphan. My parents died in a storm before I was old enough to remember them." "A convenient story for a divine child who needed protection," Artemis countered. "The question is, who placed you here, and why now are the void creatures hunting you?" Before Naruto could form a response, a tremor shook the temple. Dust rained from the ceiling as a distant boom echoed through the passage. "They've found us," Artemis said grimly, retrieving her bow. "The lie. Utinant is more persistent than I anticipated. Can't we seal the entrance?" Naruto asked, instinctively gathering light into his palms. "Against ordinary shadows, yes. Against a lieutenant of the void." She shook her head. "We'll need to fight. But first," she placed her hand on a circular stone set in the chamber's center. "We should wake the guardian." The stone glowed with silver light at her touch, then began to rotate. Symbols carved along its edge, similar to the patterns Naruto's light had formed earlier, pulsed in sequence. The entire chamber hummed with energy that resonated with the power inside him. From an alcove previously hidden in shadow, a figure emerged. Naruto tensed, expecting another enemy, but this entity moved with mechanical precision. A construct of metal and stone, shaped roughly like a human but with too many joints and a face of hammered bronze, it approached with measured steps. Olympian recognized, it intoned, voice surprisingly melodic. "State purpose. Guardian." Artemis addressed it formally. "Shadows breach this sanctuary, led by a lieutenant of the void. We seek protection and knowledge." The Guardian's face shifted, plates of metal rearranging to form a different expression. Its gaze fixed on Naruto, and something like shock registered in its mechanical features. Celestial signature detected, it announced. Bloodline of the creator confirmed. Protocol ascension activated. The floor beneath them reconfigured, central stone descending to reveal a hidden chamber below. A soft golden light emanated from it, different from Naruto's power but somehow familiar. What is protocol ascension? Naruto asked, but another tremor interrupted, stronger than the first. Cracks appeared in the passage wall. No time, Artemis urged. Guardian, defend the approach. We must access the lower chamber. The construct bowed and turned toward the entrance, arms transforming into bladed weapons. Artemis pulled Naruto toward the opening in the floor, but he resisted. Wait, you still haven't explained anything. Who am I supposed to be? What were those shadow things? Who is the Empress they mentioned? Artemis's expression softened slightly. The shadows are called Skia, manifestations of cosmic void that consume light and life. They serve the Void Empress, sister to your mother and her eternal adversary. As for who you are, she hesitated. The prophecy speaks of a child of pure celestial blood who would be hidden in the mortal realm until the time of convergence. The firstborn son of the heaven goddess, destined to reunite the fractured pantheons against the rising darkness. Naruto stared at her, disbelief warring with a strange sense of recognition. Some part of him resonated with her words, as though awakening to a truth long forgotten. That's impossible, he said, but with less conviction. I'm just a fisherman who channels celestial light and sees the energy flows of living things. Artemis raised an eyebrow. A mortal who survived direct contact with Skia and drove them back. Look inside yourself, Naruto. You've always known you were different. Before he could respond, the Guardian gave a mechanical cry of alarm. The entrance shattered inward, and shadows poured through like liquid darkness. Behind them loomed the lieutenant, its horned head nearly scraping the ceiling. Found you, little prince, it hissed, red eyes gleaming. Your light cannot hide from the void. Artemis pushed Naruto toward the opening. Go, I'll hold them back. I'm not leaving you to fight alone, Naruto protested, summoning light to his hands. It came easier now, responding to his will rather than erupting chaotically. The Guardian engaged the first wave of shadows, its bladed arms slicing through them with surprising effectiveness. Artemis took position behind it, arrows flying with impossible speed and accuracy. But the lieutenant remained untouched, assessing the situation with cold intelligence. The Guardian cannot defeat a lieutenant, Artemis said between shots, and my arrows merely wound it. We need the artifacts below if we're to escape. Naruto reluctantly backed toward the opening, maintaining a barrier of light that kept smaller shadows at bay. As he reached the edge, the lieutenant made its move, gliding forward with frightening speed. Its clawed hand struck the Guardian, sending the construct flying into the wall with a crash of breaking stone. Artemis ducked under the lieutenant's next swing, rolling to a position beside Naruto. Together, she commanded, knocking an arrow that glowed with silver light. Naruto understood instinctively. He channeled his energy into her arrow, watching in fascination as gold and silver light intertwined. Artemis released, and the red projectile streaked toward the lieutenant with comet-like brilliance. The arrow struck the shadow entity square in the chest, detonating in a nova of combined energy. The lieutenant shrieked, its form momentarily destabilized by the blast. Smaller shadows disintegrated instantly, leaving the chamber briefly clear. Now, Artemis grabbed Naruto's arm, pulling him into the opening. They landed in a smaller chamber dominated by an altar of white stone. Upon it rested a crystal sphere that pulsed with internal light. The Orb of Awakening, Artemis explained quickly, moving to the altar. Oh, nay, of 5 artifacts created by the heaven goddess before her withdrawal. It contains memories and power meant for her heir. Outside, they heard the lieutenant recovering, its rage palpable even through stone. The ceiling trembled as it attacked the upper chamber, seeking a way down. Naruto approached the orb cautiously. Up close, he could see images swirling within its crystalline depths, fragments of places he'd never seen. Faces he didn't recognize, yet which stirred something deep within him. How do he began, but Artemis merely nodded toward the artifact. It will respond to your touch. If you are truly who I believe you to be. With a deep breath, Naruto placed his hands on the crystal sphere. Immediately, light surged between them, the orb's illumination matching the rhythm of his own inner energy. Images flooded his mind, too fast to comprehend individually but collectively forming an impression of tremendous age and power. A woman's voice, achingly familiar though he'd never heard it before, whispered in his mind, "My son. If you hear this, the time has come sooner than I hoped." The seals weaken, and the void grows stronger. Find the other artifacts. Restore what was broken. Trust your light, for it is my final gift to you. The voice faded, but the connection remained. Knowledge flowed into him. Not complete understanding, but fragments he desperately needed. He saw the cosmic structure. Multiple divine realms existing in delicate balance, with the celestial realm standing above all. He glimpsed the ancient conflict between the heaven goddess and her sister, the Void Empress, that had led to the current fractured state of the divine order. Most importantly, he understood what he was. Not fully divine yet not merely mortal, a bridge between worlds, created with a specific purpose. The connection broke as the ceiling partially collapsed. The lieutenant's clawed hand reached through the opening, grasping at empty air as Artemis fired arrows at its exposed arm. "We need to leave," she urged. "The temple has other exits." Naruto lifted the orb from its stand, somehow knowing it would respond to his command. The crystal sphere collapsed into a pendant-sized gem that hung suspended in the air before him. He grasped it, feeling its power merge with his own. "This way," Artemis said, pressing her hand against a section of wall carved with a crescent moon. The stone receded, revealing another passage that sloped upward. "This will lead us out behind the mountain. From there, we must reach Olympus." "Olympus?" Naruto questioned. "Following her into the tunnel as more debris fell behind them." "As in, home of the Greek gods." "The very same," Artemis confirmed without breaking stride. "The pantheons must be alerted. Your awakening will not go unnoticed. And the Void Empress will send worse than a single lieutenant now that she knows where you are." They emerged from the passage onto a forested hillside overlooking Mizuhama. The village burned below them, shadows still swarming through its streets. No movement suggested survivors, and Naruto felt a stab of grief and guilt. "Could I have saved them if I'd understood my power sooner?" he asked quietly. Artemis studied him with those ancient eyes. "Perhaps a few. But the attack was planned, Naruto. The shadows were drawn to you specifically. Hiding your power may have kept you safe until now. But the convergence has begun. There's no more hiding possible." The lieutenant emerged from the temple entrance below, its horned head turning toward them with unerring accuracy. It began to ascend the slope, gathering shadows around it like a cloak. "We need to move," Artemis said, already starting along a deer path that led deeper into the forest. "It will track your light, but I know ways to confuse it. By nightfall we can reach the sea, and I have allies who can transport us to Greece." Naruto hesitated, looking back at the ruins of the only home he'd ever known. "Why should I trust you? A few hours ago, I was a fisherman with a strange condition. Now you're telling me I'm some sort of divine prince in a cosmic war one know nothing about." Artemis paused, regarding him with unexpected sympathy. "You shouldn't trust me, not completely. The divine realms are filled with agendas and ancient grudges. But right now, I'm your best chance at survival and understanding what you are becoming." She gestured at the lieutenant below. "And unless you have a better plan for dealing with that, I suggest we depart." She was right, of course. Naruto took one last look at Mizuhama, silently promising to return someday if possible, then followed Artemis into the deepening forest. They traveled in silence for a time, moving swiftly through undergrowth that seemed to pee art before Artemis while snagging Naruto at every turn. The pendant at his throat pulsed occasionally, responding to something only it could sense. "The orb is attuned to the other artifacts," Artemis finally explained. Noticing his attention to it, "It will help us locate them, though the journey won't be simple. Each was hidden in a different divine realm for protection. And collecting them will help me, become this celestial emperor the lieutenant mentioned." Naruto pushed a branch aside, wincing as it snapped back against his arm. "The prophecy is not my area of expertise," Artemis admitted. "I am a hunter, not an oracle. But yes, The artifacts are said to facilitate the ascension of the heaven goddess's heir to the celestial throne, a position that has stood empty since your mother entered stasis. Stasis? Naruto questioned. Not death. Gods don't die as mortals understand it, Artemis replied. Your mother exists in a state between being and non-being, maintaining what balance she can through sheer will. Without her active presence, the divine realms have drifted apart, becoming more isolated and suspicious of one another. Naruto absorbed this, trying to reconcile it with the life he'd known. And where do you fit in all this? Why help me? Artemis was silent for several steps before answering. I was hunting the Skia when I sensed your awakening. As for why I help. She glanced at him, expression unreadable. Let's say I'm curious to see if prophecies can be trusted. The Olympian Council has its own interpretations of the ancient texts, but I've always preferred to judge with my own eyes. A branch cracked behind them, too heavy to be an animal. Artemis tensed, bow appearing in her hand as if conjured from air itself. It tracked us faster than expected, she murmured. Your light leaves a trail it can follow. Naruto concentrated, trying to suppress the energy flowing through him, but it only seemed to intensify his glow. I can't turn it off, he admitted. Then we fight. Artemis knocked an arrow. Remember how we combined our powers before? We'll need something similar but stronger. The lieutenant emerged from the trees, more substantial than before. Shadows clung to it like armor, and its red eyes fixed on Naruto with malevolent intelligence. The Empress offers terms, Princelling, it said, voice like grinding stone. Surrender the orb and yourself, and your journey ends painlessly. Resist, and she will ensure your suffering lasts millennia. Counteroffer, Naruto replied, surprising himself with his boldness. Leave this realm and never return, and I won't have to discover just how much damage I can do with this light. The lieutenant laughed, a sound like breaking glass. Brave words from one who barely understands his heritage. Your mother's power took eons to develop. You were but a spark compared to her flame. Then why does your empress fear me? Naruto countered, noticing how the lieutenant stiffened at his words. Artemis gave him an approving glance. Clever. But talk won't deter it. She drew her bowstring back, silver light infusing the arrow. Now, Naruto. He channeled energy as he had before. Golden light streaming from his hands to Artemis's arrow. This time, however, he added a new element, a pattern that had appeared in his mind when he touched the orb, a symbol of warding and banishment. The arrow transformed, no longer merely a projectile but a construct of pure divine energy. When Artemis released, it didn't fly straight but spiraled around the lieutenant, creating a cage of intertwined gold and silver light. The shadow entity shrieked, clawing at the barriers of light. Where it touched them, its substance sizzled and dissolved, but the lieutenant was stronger than ordinary shadows. It pushed against the cage, darkness straining against light. It won't hold for long, Artemis warned, already backing away. We need distance. They fled deeper into the forest. The lieutenant's enraged howls echoed behind them. The cage would buy them minutes at most, but in those minutes they covered significant ground, following a stream that descended rapidly toward the coast. By nightfall, they reached the shore several miles north of Mizuhama. A small cove sheltered a single boat, sleek, silver-hulled, and unlike any fishing vessel Naruto had seen. My transport, Artemis explained. It will carry us swifter than mortal craft. As they approached, figures emerged from the water itself, women with blue-tinged skin and eyes that reflected starlight. They bowed to Artemis with fluid grace. Lady of the Hunt, one greeted her. We received your signal. The vessel is prepared. Thank you, Nereid, Artemis replied. We require swift passage to Greece. We are pursued. The sea nymphs exchanged concerned glances. The waters are troubled, my lady. Dark currents flow where they should not. We will do what we can, but the journey will not be easy. Naruto boarded the vessel cautiously, feeling it adjust beneath his weight as though alive. The wood thrummed with energy similar to Artemis's but wilder, more primal. Rest while you can, Artemis advised as the Nereids pushed them from shore. Once we reach Olympus, there will be little opportunity for recovery. The boat glided into deeper water, picking up speed without sail or oar. Nereids swam alongside, occasionally singing in a language that made the sea itself respond, currents shifting to hasten their passage. Naruto sat at the bow, watching the coastline of his homeland recede into darkness. Everything had changed in a single day. The weight of unknown expectations pressed upon him, along with grief for Mizuhama and confusion about his true nature. "You're troubled," Artemis observed, joining him. "Wouldn't you be?" he responded, more sharply than intended. "Sorry, it's just overwhelming." Artemis nodded, surprising him with her understanding. Divine heritage is rarely a blessing at first. The responsibilities outweigh the powers, and others will seek to use you for their own purposes. Her gaze held his, including, potentially, me. "At least you're honest about it," Naruto said with a wry smile. "Honesty is different from transparency," she cautioned. "I have my own reasons for helping you reach Olympus, as does every deity you'll encounter. Trust carefully, Naruto Uzumaki. Even those who seem allies may have conflicting agendas. Including you," he asked directly. A small smile curved her lips. "Especially me. I am Artemis, goddess of the hunt, the moon, and wilderness. I have existed for millennia, serving as guardian of wild places and protector of the young. But I am also an Olympian with loyalties to my pantheon. Those loyalties may not always align with your journey." Her honesty was refreshing, if unsettling. Naruto looked down at his hands, where golden light still shimmered beneath the skin. "If I'm really this prophesied heir," he said slowly, "what does that make me to you? An ally, a tool, a threat, all three, potentially," Artemis replied. "The prophecy speaks of the celestial emperor uniting the pantheons under a new order. Some will welcome this, others," she trailed off meaningfully, "would resist." Naruto finished. "Change threatens power." Artemis studied him with new interest. "You understand politics better than expected for a fisherman. Village councils aren't so different from divine ones, I imagine," Naruto said. "Just smaller stakes." A nereid appeared alongside the boat, water streaming from her azure hair. "Lady Artemis." Something follows. The currents speak of shadow and malice. Artemis cursed softly. "The lieutenant is more persistent than I anticipated. Can you outpace it?" "For a time," the sea nymph replied. "But it does not tire as we do." Naruto felt a sudden pull from the pendant at his throat. It pulsed with increasing urgency, tugging him toward the starboard side. "The orb senses something," he said, following its guidance. Looking out over dark waters, he saw nothing at first, then caught a glimmer of light beneath the surface, not reflection, but something generating its own illumination. "There's something down there," he told Artemis. "Something the orb recognizes." Artemis conferred quickly with the nereids, who dove beneath the waves to investigate. Minutes later, they returned. Expressions troubled. "An ancient shrine lies below," one reported. "Built when the seas were lower. It bears symbols of the celestial realm, but darkness has begun to corrupt it. The shadows seek it." "Another artifact?" Naruto questioned, looking to Artemis. She shook her head. "Not one of the five, but perhaps something your mother left as a waypoint. The heaven god SS created many such places of power throughout the realms." The pendant pulled stronger, almost painful against Naruto's neck. "I need to see it," he decided. "It's trying to tell me something important." "The shadows are approaching," another nereid warned. "We have little time." Artemis weighed their options visibly. "The shrine might offer protection or knowledge we need. But diving would make us vulnerable." "I'll go alone," Naruto offered. "You and the nereids can guard the surface. You cannot breathe water," Artemis pointed out, practical as ever. One of the sea nymphs approached. "I can grant the blessing of Poseidon for a short time. It would allow him to breathe below." Decision made, Naruto prepared to dive. The nereid touched his forehead with cool fingers, whispering words that seemed to flow directly into his bloodstream. His lungs tingled strangely, adapting to their new capability. "Be swift," Artemis advised. "We'll hold off the lieutenant if it arrives." Naruto nodded, then plunged into the dark water. The shock of cold lasted only moments before his body adjusted. Breathing water felt strange but sustainable as he followed the insistent pull of the pendant. The nereid guided him downward, her natural luminescence providing enough light to navigate by. As they descended, the sea floor gradually revealed itself, and with it, the unmistakable outline of a structure. The shrine had once been magnificent, its architecture similar to the Nexus Temple but scaled smaller. Columns rose from the sandy bottom, supporting a roof partially collapsed with age. Symbols carved into the stone glowed faintly, responding to Naruto's approach. Most disturbing, however, were the tendrils of darkness that had begun to infiltrate the structure. Like living ink, they crept along the foundation, slowly corrupting the ancient power contained within. The pendant pulled Naruto toward the center of the shrine, where a simple altar stood remarkably intact. Upon Chi rested a small object, a disc of crystal similar to the orb but flatter, like a coin or medallion. As Naruto approached, the darkness retreated slightly, repelled by his light. He reached for the disc, but the Nereid caught his wrist. Her expression fearful. "Darkness taints it," she warned. "It may be a trap." Naruto hesitated, studying the artifact. The corruption had indeed touched it, a spiderweb of shadow across its surface. But beneath that, he sensed the same energy as the orb, pure celestial light waiting to be reclaimed. "I have to try," he decided, breaking free of her grasp. When his fingers touched the disc, two things happened simultaneously. Golden light erupted from his hand, burning away the shadows on the artifact. But darkness also surged upward, attempting to travel through the connection to reach him. Pain lanced through Naruto's arm as light and shadow warred within him. The Nereid backed away, unable to approach the conflicting energies. Through gritted teeth, Naruto maintained his grip, instinctively drawing on the power of the orb pendant to reinforce his own light. Gradually, the shadows receded, unable to withstand the combined celestial energy. The disc cleared, revealing intricate engravings of constellations arranged in patterns Naruto somehow recognized, star maps of the divine realms. As the last shadow burned away, knowledge flooded into him just as it had with the orb. He saw paths between realms, hidden routes that bypassed traditional boundaries. Most importantly, he understood the location of another artifact, one concealed within Olympus itself. The connection broke as a concussive force hit the water above them. The Nereid grabbed his arm, pulling him upward with surprising strength. "The lieutenant," she gasped as they ascended. "It attacks your companion." They breached the surface to chaos. The lieutenant loomed over the boat, now twice its previous size and surrounded by a whirlwind of lesser shadows. Artemis fought brilliantly, her arrows creating explosions of silver light, but she was clearly outnumbered. "The disc," she shouted when she spotted him. "Did you retrieve it?" Naruto held up the crystal artifact, now purified and glowing with inner light. Understanding flashed across Artemis's face. "Use it," she commanded. "It's a celestial compass. It can open ways between realms." The lieutenant noticed their exchange and lunged toward Naruto, clawed hand extending impossibly across the distance. Naruto instinctively raised the disc like a shield, channeling his power through it as he had with Artemis's arrows. The result exceeded anything he could have anticipated. A beam of concentrated light shot from the disc, striking the lieutenant with such force that the entity was thrown backward, its substance temporarily dispersing like smoke in wind. More impressively, a tear appeared in the very fabric of reality where the beam continued, a vertical rift of golden energy. "A direct path to Olympus," Artemis breathed, genuine awe in her voice. "Impossible without divine sanction, yet you've created it with barely a thought." The rift pulsed, clearly unstable. Beyond it, Naruto glimpsed La columns and a sky too blue to be natural. "We must hurry," Artemis urged, helping him back into the boat. "Such passages are temporary and dangerous. The lieutenant will recover quickly." The Nereids pushed their vessel toward the rift, though they stopped short of entering it themselves. "We cannot follow to Olympus," their leader explained. "Our domain is the sea. May Poseidon watch over your journey." Naruto thanked them, understanding the risk they'd taken in helping him. As the boat glided into the golden tear, he looked back one last time at the world he'd known, the dark ocean, the distant shore, the scattered stars above. Then everything dissolved into brilliant light. The transition felt like being simultaneously compressed and expanded, as though every atom of his being was being examined and reassembled. When reality stabilized, they floated in a body of water unlike any natural sea, perfectly clear, with golden sand below and an impossibly azure sky above. "The sacred harbor of Olympus," Artemis announced as their boat drifted toward a gleaming dock. "Few mortals have laid eyes upon it. Fewer still have arrived unannounced through a tear in reality." Naruto barely registered her words, overwhelmed by the vista before him. Mountains rose in the distance, their peaks wreathed in clouds that shimmered with faint rainbow hues. Sprawling white structures dotted the landscape, culminating in a magnificent citadel that crowned the highest summit. The air itself tasted different, richer, more substantial, carrying scents that had no earthly equivalent. As they approached the dock, figures appeared, tall, beautiful beings who regarded them with expressions ranging from curiosity to outright hostility. At their center stood a man of imposing stature, beard and hair the color of storm clouds. Eyes literally crackling with contained lightning. "Zeus," Artemis murmured, her posture straightening. "Ruler of Olympus and my father. He doesn't appear pleased at our method of arrival." The Lord of Thunder looked many things, but, not pleased, seemed a drastic understatement. His expression suggested that smiting Naruto on the spot was a distinct possibility. "Artemis," Zeus greeted, his voice rolling like distant thunder. "You bring an unannounced visitor through a celestial rift, a serious breach of protocol. Explain yourself." Artemis stepped from the boat with fluid grace, bowing slightly. "Father, I present to you Naruto Uzumaki, awakened heir of the heaven goddess and subject of the ancient prophecy. Void creatures attacked his village, led by a lieutenant that knew him by sight. I deemed immediate extraction necessary." Zeus's gaze shifted to Naruto, who felt the weight of divine scrutiny like physical pressure. "Many have claimed connection to the celestial realm," he said skeptically. "Few have proven worthy of such claims." Naruto stepped forward, fighting the instinct to kneel before this clearly powerful being. Something in him, perhaps knowledge from the artifacts, perhaps his awakening heritage, insisted that he stand as an equal. "I make no claims, Lord Zeus," he said, surprising himself with his steady voice. "Until today, I was a fisherman who occasionally glowed. Now I'm apparently a divine heir with shadow creatures trying to kill me. I'm as confused as you are suspicious." A flicker of surprise crossed Zeus's face, followed by what might have been amusement. "Honest, at least. Very well, Naruto Uzumaki. Show me this power that marks you as celestial royalty." It wasn't a request but a command. Naruto hesitated only briefly before surrendering to the energy that had always dwelled within him. Golden light erupted from his entire form, more controlled than before but no less intense. Patterns formed in the air around him, cosmic symbols that even Zeus seemed to recognize, given his widening eyes. More telling was the reaction of the other gods present. They backed away, many raising hands in warding gestures. One dropped to his knees, openly staring. "The celestial script," Zeus murmured, lightning dancing faster in his eyes. "Not seen in the divine realms since the heaven goddess entered stasis. Perhaps there is truth to Artemis's claim after all." Naruto allowed the light to recede, suddenly aware of how exposed he felt. "I don't know what any of this means," he admitted. "But the Shadow Lieutenant called me Prince, and said the Void Empress would be displeased by my awakening. It destroyed my village hunting me." Zeus's expression darkened. "The Void Empress stirs again. Troubling news indeed." He turned to a nearby goddess, regal and beautiful with calculating gray eyes. "Athena, summon the council. This matter concerns all Olympians." "What of our guest?" she inquired, studying Naruto with undisguised interest. "He will be quartered appropriately while we deliberate," Zeus decided. "Under guard, of course. Celestial heir or not, protocols must be observed." "Father," Artemis interjected, "the lieutenant will not stop pursuing him. Olympus itself may be at risk if—" "I am well aware of the dangers, daughter," Zeus cut her off. "Which is why the council must convene immediately. If this truly is the prophesied convergence, all pantheons must be alerted." His gaze returned to Naruto. "And if he is truly the heaven goddess's son, he has much to learn before he can claim any throne, celestial or otherwise." Quote, Naruto felt the weight of destiny settling on his shoulders, a burden he'd never asked for but could no longer avoid. As Zeus turned to leave, Naruto called after him. "There's another artifact hidden in Olympus," he said, drawing startled looks from the assembled deities. "The disk showed me. I need to find it." Zeus paused, turning slowly. "You presume to make demands in my realm, young one." Quote, "Not demands," Naruto clarified. "But if the Shadow Lieutenant tracked us once, it will do so again. The artifacts are my best defense, and possibly your best defense against what's coming." A tense silence followed, broken eventually by Zeus's reluctant nod. "We will discuss this in council. Until then, rest and prepare yourself. Olympus has not hosted a celestial heir in millennia. Many will wish to meet you, not all with friendly intent." With that ominous warning, Zeus departed, most of the other deities following. Artemis remained beside Naruto, her expression unreadable. "That went better than expected," she commented. "He didn't smite you immediately. Is that supposed to be reassuring?" Naruto asked, watching as Athena approached them. "For Zeus, that was practically a warm welcome," Artemis replied with the ghost of a smile. "Now comes the hard part. Navigating Olympian politics while we search for the next artifact." Athena reached them, her gray eyes assessing Naruto with unsettling thoroughness. "The guest chambers in the western wing have been prepared," she informed them. "Artemis, the council expects your full report in 1 hour." "And what of Naruto?" Artemis questioned. "He should be present for any discussion of his situation." "In time," Athena replied diplomatically. "First, the council must establish protocol for this unprecedented circumstance." She turned her penetrating gaze to Naruto. "Rest assured, Celestial Heir, Olympus offers protection while we determine the proper course. Though I admit, your rival raises fascinating questions about the nature of divine succession and the prophecy's interpretation." Something in her tone suggested those fascinating questions might involve uncomfortable testing of Naruto's abilities and nature. He suppressed a shiver as Athena departed, her calculating mind almost palpable. "I'm not going to become some divine experiment," Naruto muttered as they load a minor deity toward their assigned quarters. "Focus on finding the artifact," Artemis advised quietly. "The celestial compass showed you its location, that gives us advantage. Once we secure it, our position strengthens considerably." Naruto nodded, fingers closing around both the orb pendant and the newly acquired disc. Together, they painted a clearer picture of his path forward, though that path led through a political minefield of divine proportions. As they entered the sprawling marble complex of Olympus proper, Naruto couldn't help but wonder how many more lives would be affected by his awakening, and whether he could bear the responsibility his heritage demanded. The orphaned fisherman from Mizuhama seemed increasingly distant, replaced by something both more and less than human. The first chapter of his new existence had begun, written in golden light and shadow. Chapter 1 End Chapter 2, Olympian Trials. Golden sunlight streamed through columns of polished marble, casting long shadows across the mosaic floor where Naruto stood alone. The guest chamber assigned to him in Olympus's western wing exceeded the size of his entire fishing shack 100-fold, its vaulted ceilings, ornate furnishings, and shimmering fountain speaking to a luxury he found more alienating than impressive. 8 hours had passed since his arrival, and not a single deity had visited, not even Artemis. Isolation is strategy. He recognized it well. Naruto approached the room's eastern balcony, footsteps echoing in the cavernous space. Beyond the intricately carved balustrade, Olympus sprawled in impossible grandeur, terraced gardens cascading down mountainsides, temples of brilliant white stone defying mortal architectural limitations, distant figures moving with the fluid grace unique to immortals. The divine realm existed simultaneously as part of Earth and separate from it, occupying a dimensional pocket where physics bent to divine will. "Magnificent, isn't it?" a voice behind him observed. "Though I suspect you find it somewhat overwhelming." Naruto turned to find a slender woman with auburn hair watching him from the chamber entrance. Unlike Artemis's practical hunting garb, she wore flowing robes of deep crimson accented with gold embroidery. Her face bore a family resemblance to Zeus, the same strong features softened by feminine grace, but her eyes sparkled with mischief rather than thunder. "Lady Hebe," she introduced herself with a graceful inclination of her head. "Goddess of youth and cupbearer to the gods. I've brought refreshment." She gestured to the tray she carried, laden with a crystal decanter and goblets that shimmered with their own inner light. "Thank you," Naruto replied cautiously, aware this might be the first test Olympus presented. "Though I'm surprised they sent anyone at all, much less a daughter of Zeus himself." Surprise flickered across Hebe's features before she laughed, a sound like silver bells. "You recognize my lineage. Perhaps there is truth to your celestial heritage after all." She set the tray on a nearby table of polished obsidian. "As for why they sent me, who better to assess an emerging divinity than she? Ho understands the transition from youth to immortal power. She poured a liquid that shifted colors like mother of pearl into 2 goblets, offering one to Naruto. Nectar. Divine sustenance. If you are truly of celestial blood, it will strengthen you. If not, she left the warning unspoken. Naruto accepted the goblet, examining the shifting contents. His senses detected no malice in the offering, but caution seemed prudent. Is poisoning guests standard Olympian protocol? Hibi's eyes widened before genuine amusement transformed her expression. How refreshing. Most visitors tremble in awe or preemptively grovel. You speak to a goddess as though addressing an equal. Perhaps because I don't know any other way to speak, Naruto replied honestly. 24 hours ago, I was a fisherman. The proper etiquette for addressing immortals wasn't part of my education. Then drink as you would any offered hospitality, Hibi suggested, sipping from her own goblet. With gratitude and appropriate caution. Decision made. Naruto raised the vessel to his lips. The nectar tasted unlike anything earthly. Sunshine distilled into liquid, mountain air at dawn, the essence of life itself. It coursed through him like lightning, amplifying the energy already coursing beneath his skin. Golden light briefly illuminated his veins before settling into a steady warmth. Hibi watched with undisguised fascination. Interesting reaction. Not rejection, certainly, but not quite the response of an Olympian either. Something older. She set her goblet down. The council convenes in 1 hour. I'm to escort you when the time comes. And until then, Naruto asked, setting his own drink aside as the surge of power gradually stabilized. Until then, I answer what questions I may. She settled onto a cushioned bench with casual grace. Consider it a courtesy from one who remembers what it means to discover one's divinity. Naruto studied her, assessing sincerity versus ulterior motive. Ending the former outweighing the latter, he asked, why does Zeus mistrust me? Artemis said the prophecy about the celestial emperor was well known. Prophecies, Hibi sighed, are simultaneously greatest guides and most troublesome enigmas. The text speaks of a child of celestial blood who would rise as emperor of light, uniting fractured pantheons against encroaching darkness. What trouble? My father is the phrase, new divine order. Zeus has ruled Olympus since overthrowing the Titans. Any change to the cosmic hierarchy threatens his position. I have no interest in cosmic politics, Naruto stated firmly. I only want to understand what I am and why shadow creatures destroyed my village. Hibi's expression softened with genuine sympathy. The void entities, Skia, as Artemis named them, serve the Void Empress. Sister and adversary to your mother. If you are indeed the heaven goddess's son, you represent the continuation of a cosmic conflict that predates even the Titans. Tell me about my mother, Naruto requested, the words strange on his tongue. The artifacts showed glimpses, but nothing substantial. Hibi hesitated. Even among gods, the heaven goddess remains some. What mythical? A primordial entity who shaped the original cosmic order before withdrawing into stasis. She's said to have created the divine realms as separate but interconnected domains, each with its own pantheon to maintain balance. Zeus and the other ruling deities acknowledge her supremacy in theory but have grown accustomed to autonomy in her absence. And the Void Empress, my aunt, relationship felt absurd to even contemplate. Equally powerful but fundamentally opposed to creation, Hibi explained. Where your mother brought light and form, her sister embodies darkness and dissolution. Their conflict shaped reality itself, until the heaven goddess sacrificed her active presence to prevent total destruction. She studied him thoughtfully. The prophecy suggests her power continues through her bloodline, through you. Before Naruto could formulate his next question, a disturbance rippled through the air, a pressure change like the moment before lightning strikes. Hibi straightened immediately, her casual demeanor replaced with formal attentiveness. Father calls the council to order earlier than planned, she explained, rising. We must go now. The journey through Olympus's sprawling complex revealed more of the divine realm's impossible beauty. Walkways of crystal-connected buildings that should have collapsed under their own weight. Gardens bloomed with flowers that changed color as they passed. Fountains sprayed water in complex mathematical patterns that defied gravity. Throughout, divine beings paused in their activities to stare at Naruto, some curious, others openly hostile. All measuring him against some unspoken standard. Their destination proved to be a circular amphitheater carved from a single massive piece of white marble, open to the sky, yet somehow protected from the elements. 12 monumental thrones arranged in a semicircle dominated the space, each uniquely designed to reflect its owner's domain. At the center, Zeus sat upon a seat of electrum inlaid with thunderbolt patterns, his presence commanding absolute attention. Most thrones were occupied, though Naruto noted 3 remained empty. Artemis occupied a silver seat adorned with crescent moons and forest motifs, her expression carefully neutral when their eyes met. Beside her, a god radiating such brilliant light that it hurt to look directly at him, Apollo, Naruto Pr. assumed, watched with barely disguised suspicion. "Approach, Naruto Uzumaki," Zeus commanded, his voice filling the amphitheater without effort. "Stand before the Olympian Council and be judged." Hebe guided him to the circle's center before retreating to a smaller seat near a matronly goddess whose features reflected both Zeus's power and a warmer feminine authority, Hera, Queen of Olympus. Alone in the council's focus, Naruto faced Zeus directly. "I come seeking understanding, Lord Zeus, not judgment. My village lies destroyed, my former life ended. I only wish to know why." A ripple of murmurs circled the thrones, cut short by Zeus's raised hand. Bold words from one who stands before gods. Thunder rumbled in the distance, emphasizing his displeasure. "Artemis claims you bear Celestia blood, that you are the prophesied heir of the heaven goddess herself. Such claims require proof beyond mere light manipulation. What proof would satisfy Olympus?" Naruto asked, maintaining intact despite the pressure of Zeus's divine aura. A god seated on a throne of bronze and iron leaned forward, muscular to the point of brutishness, his face scarred beneath a close-cropped beard. "Let him face me in combat," he suggested with eager bloodlust. "Divine blood shows itself in battle, father." "Peace, Ares," countered Athena from her seat of polished silver olive wood. "Brute force proves nothing of celestial heritage. We require more sophisticated verification." "The labyrinth of divine reflection," suggested a goddess Naruto couldn't immediately identify, beautiful beyond mortal comprehension. "Her throne crafted from pink marble and mother of pearl. It reveals one's true nature, divine or otherwise." Zeus considered this a worthy suggestion. "Aphrodite. The labyrinth has not been used since the Age of Heroes. But its purpose remains valid." His electric gaze returned to Naruto. "3 trials shall determine your claim's validity. The labyrinth of divine reflection, the hunt of celestial beasts, and the forge of creation. Success in all 3 would challenge even an established deity. And if I refuse?" Naruto questioned, already knowing the answer. "Then you will be returned to the mortal realm with all memory of Olympus erased," Zeus stated flatly. "We cannot permit potential divine impostors to retain knowledge of our domain." "I'll accept your trials," Naruto decided after brief consideration. "Though I suspect you've designed them to confirm your suspicions rather than reveal truth." Outraged gasps echoed from several thrones, but Artemis's lips quirked in what might have been approval. Zeus himself narrowed his eyes, storm clouds gathering above the open amphitheater. "You speak dangerously for one whose status remains unconfirmed," the thunder god warned. "The trials begin at dawn tomorrow. Until then, you will remain under observation." He gestured to a goddess previously silent, small and unassuming compared to her counterparts, her throne constructed from simple hearth stones that nevertheless radiated comforting warmth. "Hestia will serve as your guardian until morning. She has volunteered for the responsibility." The goddess of the hearth rose, her modest brown robes shifting like flames at the edges. Unlike the other deities, her expression held neither suspicion nor calculation, only gentle curiosity and something like recognition. "Come, young one," she said, her voice unexpectedly resonant for her diminutive stature. "Let us prepare you for what lies ahead." As Naruto followed Hestia from the amphitheater, he felt Artemis's gaze tracking him. When he glanced back, her silver eyes conveyed a silent message he somehow understood, _watch. Listen, learn what you can, _ then the council chamber disappeared from view. As they descended a spiraling staircase seemingly carved from living crystal. "They fear what they don't understand," Hestia commented as they walked. "Zeus most of all, though he'd never admit it." "And you?" Naruto asked. "Do you fear me too, Lady Hestia. A smile warmed her features, transforming them from merely pleasant to radiantly beautiful. I am goddess of home and hearth, Naruto Uzumaki. My domain encompasses family bonds across all realms. And I recognize something in you that the others have missed. She paused, studying him with eyes that suddenly reflected infinite depth. You carry her hearth fire within you, the original flame from which all creation sparked. They entered a chamber unlike any Naruto had seen in Olympus thus far. Where other spaces emphasized grandeur and imposing architecture, this room felt homely. A central fire pit burned with flames that shifted through rainbow hues, surrounded by comfortable seating that invited rest rather than formal posture. The walls displayed no ostentatious decoration but were adorned with simple tokens that radiated personal meaning: a child's clay handprint, a wreath of dried flowers, a carved wooden figure worn smooth with handling. My personal sanctuary, Hestia explained, gesturing for him to sit near the hearth. Few Olympians visit, preferring grander venues for their discussions. But sometimes, the most important truths emerge in simplest settings. Naruto settled cross-legged before the fire, feeling its warmth penetrate deeper than mere physical sensation. Something about the flames resonated with his inner light, creating harmonics that settled his chaotic thoughts. You knew my mother, he stated rather than asked, watching Hestia's face for reaction. She nodded, seating herself across the hearth from him. Not as the others knew her, not as supreme deity or cosmic architect. I knew her as friend. She stirred the fire with an iron poker, causing sparks to spiral upward in complex patterns. Before Zeus and the Olympians, before even the Titans, the primordial entities shaped reality. Your mother was first among them, the heaven goddess, bringer of light and form. I was among the first she created, tasked with tending the sacred flame of life. But your mythology states you're Zeus's sister, Naruto pointed out, recalling fragments of knowledge from village storytellers. Hestia smiled enigmatically. Pantheons rewrite their histories as ruling powers change. What matters is that I recognize her essence in you, particularly when you channel her light. She leaned forward, firelight dancing across her features. The trials Zeus has set are dangerous, deliberately so. He hopes you'll fail, confirming his belief that the celestial bloodline ended with your mother's withdrawal. And if I succeed? Naruto asked. Then his fear only increases. Hestia sighed. The prophecy speaks of necessary change to the cosmic order, change that threatens established power structures. Zeus interprets this as potential usurpation. Naruto absorbed this, watching the shifting flames. I have no interest in anyone's throne. I just want to understand why shadow creatures, Skia, destroyed everything I knew. The void entities serve the Void Empress, Hestia explained. If they've targeted you specifically, it suggests your aunt has sensed your awakening and considers you a threat. She fears the prophecy as much as Zeus, but for different reasons. What exactly does this prophecy say? Naruto pressed. Everyone references it, but no one recites it. Hestia studied him fully before reciting in rhythmic cadence. When shadow stretches across divided realms. When ancient bonds lie fractured beyond repair. The firstborn son of heaven's light shall wake. Golden power flowing through mortal flesh. Trials of darkness forge the emperor's crown. As void consumes what order left unmade. United pantheons beneath celestial throne. Shall stand against the final night's embrace. Or all creation fades to endless void. The fire flared as she finished. Golden flames briefly taking shapes that resembled cosmic scenes, divine realms separated by growing darkness, shadows consuming stars. A central figure radiating light that pushed back the encroaching void. So I'm supposed to unite the pantheons? Naruto asked incredulously. Gods who've been independent for millennia suddenly accepting a new authority because prophecy demands it. Prophecies don't dictate outcomes, Hestia corrected gently. They merely illuminate possibilities. How events unfold depends on choices made by those involved. She studied him with ancient eyes. Including your choices, Naruto Uzumaki. Beginning with these trials, he concluded grimly. Indeed, the labyrinth of divine reflection will force you to confront your true nature, the aspects of yourself you've hidden or denied. The hunt challenges not just combat skill but judgment of when to fight and when to show mercy. And the forge, she hesitated. The Forge of Creation tests your ability to channel divine will into physical manifestation, a power unique to true deities. I've never created anything, Naruto admitted. My light has only ever been defensive or destructive. Because you've suppressed it, Hestia observed. What were you thinking when the light first manifested in your village? When the Skia attacked, Naruto closed his eyes, recalling the moment. I wanted to protect them. The crew, the villagers. I wanted to push back the darkness. Protection and illumination. Two fundamental aspects of celestial power. Hestia noted approvingly. Creation builds upon these foundations. To make something new requires first envisioning its purpose, then infusing that vision with divine will. She gestured to the hearth. Try. Focus on the flames and extend your awareness into them. Skeptical but willing, Naruto concentrated on the multicolored fire. His awareness expanded as instructed. Sensing the intricate dance of energy within each flame, Hestia's divine influence maintained the fire's form and properties, her will manifested through continuous attention. Now, she instructed softly, envision something simple, perhaps a flower formed of flame, and extend your light toward that purpose. Naruto pictured a lotus blossom, similar to those that grew in ponds near Mizuhama. Golden energy flowed from his hands into the hearth, interacting with the existing fire. For a moment nothing happened, then flames suddenly twisted upward, coalescing into a perfect fiery lotus that hovered above the hearth. He began in astonishment, breaking concentration. The flower immediately dissolved back into ordinary flames. Well done, Hestia praised, genuine pleasure warming her voice. Few manage any coherent manifestation on first attempt. With practice, you could create objects of substance rather than mere illusion. Their lesson continued through the evening, Tia patiently guiding Naruto through increasingly complex exercises in energy manipulation. By midnight, he could maintain simple flame constructs for several minutes and had begun experimenting with solidifying light into temporary physical objects. Rest now, Hestia eventually advised, noting his fatigue. The labyrinth awaits at dawn, and you'll need full concentration to navigate its challenges. Thank you, Naruto said sincerely, for teaching me, and for recognizing something worth teaching. Hestia's smile contained both compassion and something deeper, an ancient sadness. You remind me of her, not just in power but in spirit. She too questioned her purpose, though that was eons before she established the cosmic order. She rose, the hearth flames dimming slightly with her movement. Whatever tomorrow brings, remember that your worth exists independent of Zeus's judgment or any prophecy's demands. With those parting words, she guided him to sleeping quarters adjacent to her sanctuary, a simple room with a comfortable bed and a small hearth maintaining gentle illumination. Left alone, Naruto found himself unable to immediately rest, mind racing with implications of divinity and prophecy. He approached the room's single window, gazing out at Olympus bathed in moonlight. Somewhere in this divine citadel, Artemis was likely reporting every detail of their journey to the council. Would she mention how he'd instinctively channeled his power through her arrows? Or the lieutenant's specific recognition of his status? Either could influence tomorrow's trials. A soft knock interrupted his thoughts. Cautious, he approached the door, senses extended to detect any threat. It's me, came Artemis's unmistakable voice, low and urgent. Naruto opened the door to find the huntress goddess in the corridor. Silver eyes darting to check for observers before she slipped inside. This is unwise, he commented as she secured the door behind her. Won't visiting the suspect violate some Olympian protocol? Protocol means little when cosmic balance hangs in jeopardy, she replied tersely. The council deliberated for hours after you left. Zeus has stacked the trials against you, Naruto. They're designed to prove you mortal, not divine. Hestia suggested as much, he acknowledged. Though she's been helping me prepare. Artemis nodded. Hestia follows her own counsel. Independent of Olympian politics, she's long maintained that the heaven goddess will someday return through her bloodline. She paced the small room with contained energy. But Zeus fears change to the established order. The other pantheons are being notified of your existence, but with warnings rather than celebration. Why are you telling me this? Naruto asked directly. You serve Olympus. Helping me contradicts your pantheon's apparent interests. Artemis stopped pacing, her expression unusually vulnerable. I serve balance above all else. As goddess of the hunt, I track what Raiden's natural order, and the Skia represent the greatest such threat. She met his gaze directly. If you are truly the heaven goddess's heir, your awakening was prophesied for this specific moment, when void encroaches across all realms. Politics cannot supersede cosmic necessity. The explanation made sense, but Naruto sensed additional motivations left unspoken. Before he could press further, Artemis continued. The labyrinth begins at dawn. It will manifest your deepest doubts and fears as physical challenges. The more you resist self-knowledge, the more dangerous they become. She hesitated. Most importantly, the labyrinth will attempt to fragment your identity. Remember who you are, Naruto Uzumaki, even when faced with who you might become. Cryptic advice for an already confusing situation. He observed with a hint of wry humor. Unexpectedly, Artemis smiled, a brief expression that transformed her severe features. Indeed, but necessary nonetheless. She moved toward the door. One last thing. Zeus has assigned observers for each trial. I volunteered for the labyrinth. Remember that anything you reveal becomes part of the official record. With that warning, she slipped from the room as silently as she'd arrived, leaving Naruto with more questions than answers. He eventually found restless sleep, dreams filled with shadow creatures, golden light, and a woman's voice calling from across impossible distance. Dawn arrived with ceremonial fanfare, trumpets of silver and gold announcing the day of trials. Hestia escorted Naruto to an ancient section of Olympus rarely visited by even the gods themselves. A dozen deities had gathered to witness the event, Zeus prominent among them on a portable throne of storm clouds. Artemis stood apart, bow slung across her back, expression professionally detached. The labyrinth's entrance resembled an ordinary stone archway until Naruto approached. Then the space between its pillars shimmered like heat distortion, revealing glimpses of constantly shifting corridors beyond. The labyrinth of divine reflection reveals truth through challenge, Zeus announced formally. Enter, Naruto Uzumaki, and emerge either vindicated or humbled by self-knowledge. Hestia squeezed his shoulder in silent support before stepping back. Artemis approached as designated observer, her silver eyes conveying caution. I follow but cannot intervene, she explained. Formal for the watching audience. The labyrinth is yours to navigate alone. Naruto nodded understanding before stepping through the archway. Reality distorted around him, the sensation similar to passing through the rift that had brought them to Olympus but less violent. When his vision cleared, he stood in a corridor of polished black stone that reflected his image. With perfect clarity, except the reflection showed him wreathed in golden fire, eyes radiating celestial light. Interesting beginning, Artemis commented from behind him, her voice echoing strangely. The labyrinth already acknowledges your dual nature. Naruto studied the mirrored version of himself, noting differences beyond the obvious energy manifestation. His reflected self stood straighter, features more defined, bearing an unmistakable aura of authority that the fisherman from Mizuhama had never possessed. Is that how you see me? He asked Artemis, watching her reflection appear beside his. I see potential, she replied carefully, whether realized or not depends on choices yet unmade. The corridor extended before them, eventually splitting into 3 branches. As they approached the junction, writing appeared on the wall, ancient script that rearranged itself into words Naruto could understand. Choose the path that reflects your heart's truth. Power sought for ambition's sake. Power accepted for duty's burden. Power rejected for peace of spirit. A philosophical question disguised as directional choice, Naruto observed. Clever. The labyrinth tests character as much as power. Artemis confirmed. Choose according to your honest nature, not what you believe others wish to see. Naruto considered each option carefully. Ambition had never driven him, even in Mizuhama. He'd sought only acceptance and simplicity. Rejection of power seemed equally false. He'd spent years suppressing his abilities rather than truly rejecting them. That left the middle path, which resonated with his emerging understanding of heritage and responsibility. Power accepted for duty's burden, he decided, stepping toward the central corridor. The passage accepted his choice, walls shimmering briefly as they proceeded. The reflective surfaces gradually transformed, no longer showing simple mirrors but scenes from his past, fishing on the Kajiki, practicing control exercises alone on deserted beaches. Comforting Kenji after the younger man's first violent storm at sea. The labyrinth confirms your history, Artemis noted. It seeks contradictions between claimed identity and true past. As they progressed deeper, the reflections shifted to show not what had been but what might have been. Naruto leading Mizuhama as respected elder, married with children, high-S powers carefully hidden through disciplined suppression. The images carried emotional weight, tugging at his heart with possibilities now forever lost. Attempts at distraction, Artemis warned. He labyrinth offers alternatives to undermine resolve. Naruto nodded understanding, though the visions of peaceful mortality affected him more than he cared to admit. They continued forward until aching a circular chamber where the reflective surfaces showed something entirely different. Naruto robed in celestial garments, seated upon a throne of pure light, divine beings from multiple pantheons bowing before him. Power radiated from this image, along with absolute authority. The Emperor of Light, Artemis breathed, surprise evident in her tone. The labyrinth shows your prophesied role. Before Naruto could respond, the chamber darkened abruptly. The reflected Emperor's eyes shifted from gold to crimson, his expression transforming from benevolent to tyrannical. Divine supplicants became cowering slaves as the throne's light hardened into blinding radiance that seemed to scorch rather than illuminate. Or perhaps this outcome, came a voice from the darkness, his own voice, but colder, harder. Power corrupts, after all, even celestial power. From the shadowed portion of the chamber, a figure emerged, Naruto himself, but transformed. This doppelganger radiated golden light, corrupted with streaks of void-like darkness, his expression calculating and merciless. The labyrinth manifests your fear, Artemis warned, backing away as the protocol of non-interference required. This is illusion given form, not reality. Is it merely illusion? The shadow Naruto questioned, circling the original, or potential future. The line between divine justice and tyranny has always been thin. Ask your Olympian friends, how many mortals have suffered for their pride, their jealousy, their momentary displeasure. He gestured to the reflected throne scene, now showing devastation inflicted upon disobedient subjects. Absolute power demands absolute obedience. The Void Empress understands this. Your mother refused to acknowledge it. That was her weakness. You know nothing of her, Naruto responded firmly, refusing to back away from his darker reflection. I know everything you know, Shadow Naruto countered, plus what you refuse to admit. The resentment toward villagers who feared you. The bitterness of isolation. The secret thrill when your power finally unleashed against the Skia. He leaned closer, voice dropping to conspiratorial whisper. Tell me you didn't enjoy watching them dissolve in your light. Tell me you haven't wondered what else, who else, might dissolve just as easily. The accusation struck uncomfortably close to unacknowledged thoughts. Naruto had experienced satisfaction destroying the shadow creatures, perhaps even vindication after years of restraint. Did that capacity for destructive pleasure indicate corruption to come? Artemis watched silently, her expression revealing nothing. This challenge required his resolution alone. Power itself isn't corruption, Naruto finally stated, meeting his doppelganger's gaze directly. Intent determines whether light heals or burns. I reject neither my capacity for destruction nor my responsibility to choose differently. He extended his hand, golden light gathering in his palm, not as weapon but as offering. You exist because I acknowledge these possibilities within myself. But acknowledgement isn't surrender to inevitability. The shadow Naruto seemed taken aback by this response, having expected either denial or aggression. After a moment's hesitation, he reached for the offered light. Where their hands met, energy flowed between them, darkness gradually filtering away until only a single Naruto remained, whole, integrated, neither rejecting his shadow nor consumed by it. The chamber brightened as reflective surfaces showed a balanced image, Naruto radiating golden light that illuminated without blinding. Authority tempered by compassion. Well navigated, Artemis commented, genuine respect in her tone. Few face their darker aspects so directly. Before Naruto could respond, the chamber reconfigured. Walls shifted like liquid, solidifying into a new challenge, a bottomless chasm spanned by a bridge of what appeared to be solid light. On the far side waited an ordinary doorway, presumably the labyrinth's exit. The Bridge of Faith, Artemis identified. It responds only to those who truly believe in their nature. Those with doubt fall through illusion to the chambers below. Naruto approached the bridge cautiously. It appeared solid enough, constructed from the same golden energy that flowed through him. Yet when he extended his senses toward it, he detected no substantial structure, merely a convincing projection. I'm expected to walk across emptiness on faith alone? He asked incredulously. On identity alone, Artemis corrected. The bridge exists for those it recognizes as divine. If you truly believe yourself the heaven goddess's heir, it will support you. If doubt persists, she left the consequence unspoken, but the abyss below conveyed sufficient warning. Naruto stood at the edge, considering. Did he truly believe himself divine? The evidence mounted. His inexplicable powers, the artifacts, recognition, the lieutenant's specific identification. Yet decades of considering himself merely human, albeit unusual, created deep-rooted uncertainty. Faith isn't absence of doubt, he realized aloud. It's moving forward despite doubt. With that understanding, he stepped onto the bridge of light. For one heart-stopping moment, his foot seemed to pass through the illuminated surface, then solid resistance materialized beneath him. The bridge recognized him, responding to his celestial energy with corresponding support. Naruto crossed the chasm with growing confidence, each step confirming connection to his heritage. When he reached the opposite side, the doorway glowed with activation, swinging open to reveal sunlight beyond. The labyrinth acknowledges your nature, Artemis stated formally as they exited into Olympian sunshine. Though whether Zeus accepts its judgment remains to be seen. The assembled deities awaited their emergence with expressions ranging from surprise to displeasure. Zeus himself appeared thunderous in the literal sense. Storm clouds gathering above his throne. He navigated the labyrinth of divine reflection successfully, Artemis reported, resuming her role as official observer. The challenges were substantial, including direct confrontation with potential corruption, yet he maintained integrity of purpose throughout. The bridge of faith supported his passage, confirming divine essence. Murmurs spread through the divine audience. Hestia, watching from beside a towering god who could only be Poseidon, nodded approval. Apollo, standing near his father's throne, frowned in evident disappointment. One trial means little, Zeus declared, rising from his seat. The hunt of celestial beasts begins at noon. Prepare yourself, challenger. With that abrupt dismissal, he departed in a literal thunderclap. Several deities following in his wake. He expected failure, Artemis commented once most observers had dispersed. Your success disrupts his preferred narrative. The labyrinth showed me something troubling. Naruto said quietly, a version of myself corrupted by power. Is that outcome Zeus fears? It's one possibility among many, Hestia interjected, approaching them. The labyrinth also showed you rejecting that path, integrating shadow rather than succumbing to it. That choice matters more than potential temptation. Athena remained behind, studying Naruto with analytical intensity. Fascinating performance, she commented. The labyrinth rarely manifests direct confrontation with one's shadow aspect. Your resolution suggests psychological maturity unusual for your apparent age. 20 years of controlling unpredictable power teaches caution and self-awareness, Naruto replied evenly. When suppression fails, understanding becomes necessary. The wisdom goddess nodded appreciatively before addressing Artemis. The celestial beasts have been prepared for the hunt. Apollo selected them personally, quite the challenge for our contestant. The sly emphasis on contestant conveyed volumes about Athena's diplomatic neutrality. After she departed, Artemis's expression darkened. If Apollo selected the beasts, expect maximum difficulty. Her resents anything that threatens Zeus's absolute authority, including prophecies of cosmic realignment. What exactly are celestial beasts? Naruto asked, focusing on immediate concerns. Divine creatures that inhabit the spaces between pantheons, Hestia explained. Neither fully material nor purely spiritual, they embody primal forces in animal form. Hunting them requires more than physical skill. You must understand their essential nature. Servants appeared with refreshment and a change of clothing more suitable for combat, a tunic of material that seemed to absorb rather than reflect light. Paired with durable leggings and boots designed for pursuit, Naruto accepted the practical garments, gratefully shedding his salt-stained fisherman's clothes that seemed increasingly irrelevant to his new reality. "I'll guide you to the hunting grounds," Artemis offered once he'd changed. "As goddess of the hunt, I'm required to oversee this trial, though again prohibited from direct assistance." Hestia squeezed his shoulder encouragingly. "Remember what we practiced with the hearth fire. Creation and destruction are opposite faces of the same divine ability. When confronting the beasts, consider whether elimination or transformation better serves balance." With that cryptic advice, she departed for her duties elsewhere in Olympus, leaving Naruto with Artemis. The huntress led him through less populated sections of the divine citadel toward what appeared to be wilderness encroaching on marble perfection, a managed forest of impossible trees that towered hundreds of feet high, their silver leaves creating dappled patterns of light and shadow. The Grove of Echoes, Artemis named it, a fragment of primordial forest preserved since creation's earliest days. The beasts roam freely here, contained by boundaries only they can perceive. As they walked, Artemis provided practical instruction on celestial hunting techniques, her professional demeanor occasionally softening when describing particular creatures with evident respect. Naruto absorbed her knowledge while observing their surroundings with increasing wonder. The grove hummed with energy unlike anything in the mortal world, ancient, sentient, watching their passage with collective awareness. "The trees remember when your mother walked among them," Artemis noted, noticing his attention to their surroundings. "They recognize something familiar in your energy signature." "You speak as though they're conscious," Naruto observed. "All things contain consciousness to varying degrees," she replied matter-of-factly. "Divine awareness simply perceives what mortal senses ignore." She stopped at a clearing marked with an archway similar to the labyrinth's entrance. "Here we part temporarily. I will observe from divine perspective while you hunt in physical form. Any final advice before I face Apollo's selected challenges?" Naruto asked. Artemis hesitated, protocol warring with evident concern. Remember that hunting requires balance between predator and prey. True hunters take only what maintains cosmic order, not what satisfies ego or bloodlust. Her silver eyes held his. "And be wary of the herd beast. Apollo chose with specific intent to test your limitations." With that warning, she stepped backward, her form shimmering before dissolving into moonlight that scattered through the forest canopy. Though invisible, her presence remained palpable, watching, evaluating. Naruto passed through the archway, instantly feeling the grove's atmosphere intensify. Colors deepened, scents sharpened, sounds clarified with preternatural precision. His senses expanded beyond normal human limitations, perceiving energy signatures throughout the surrounding forest. 3 distinct patterns stood out. The celestial beasts he was tasked with hunting. The closest emanated fierce heat approximately 2 kilometers eastward, its energy signature reminiscent of concentrated sunlight. Moving with newfound stealth, Naruto approached through underbrush that seemed to part accommodatingly before him. As he neared his quarry, scorched vegetation indicated its recent path. Finally, from concealment behind a massive silver trunk, Naruto observed his first target, a creature resembling a lion but twice the natural size, its mane literal flames that consumed nothing yet burned with obvious heat. Golden light radiated from its form, creating an aura of concentrated summer noon. It moved with predatory grace through the forest, occasionally igniting small fires with casual disregard. "The Nemean Sunlion," came Artemis's disembodied voice, barely a whisper in his consciousness. "Offspring of Apollo's sacred cattle and wildfire elementals. Its hide repels conventional weapons, and its roar can trigger spontaneous combustion in living tissue." Naruto studied the magnificent creature, noting both its beauty and destructive potential. Direct confrontation seemed unwise given its obvious power. The trial demanded some form of resolution. Remembering Hestia's training with the hearth fire, he considered alternatives to combat. The Sunlion paused at a stream, flames dimming slightly as it lowered its head to drink. Naruto recognized his opportunity. Concentrating, he channeled golden energy into his palms, forming it into a construct resembling a net of light. When the pattern stabilized, he emerged from cover and cast it toward the creature with a fluid motion. The Sunlion reacted instantly, whirling to face him with flames intensifying to blinding brilliance. It roared, a sound like forest fires devouring oxygen, and leapt toward Naruto with lethal intent. His net of light intercepted the attack, expanding to encompass the beast entirely. Rather than restraining through force, the construct resonated with the Sunlion's own energy frequency, creating harmonics that gradually calmed its aggressive instincts. Confusion replaced rage in the creature's eyes as it found itself unable to attack yet not physically restrained. Naruto maintained focus, adjusting his energy to communicate without words, respect for the beast's nature combined with firm assertion of dominance in this encounter. Slowly, understanding dawned in the Sunlion's gaze. It settled onto its haunches, flames receding to manageable intensity. Naruto approached cautiously, maintaining the harmonic connection. When he stood before the seated beast, he extended his hand. The Sunlion considered this gesture before inclining its magnificent head, allowing brief contact with its fiery mane that surprisingly caused no burn. Impressive resolution, Artemis's voice commented. Dominance established without destruction. The Sunlion acknowledges your authority. As if confirming her assessment, the creature rose and padded away into the forest, occasionally glancing back as though expecting Naruto to follow. Instead, he turned his attention toward the second energy signature, cool, fluid, constantly shifting location approximately 5 kilometers northward. The journey through the grove revealed further wonders, plants unlike any in the mortal realm, small divine creatures that paused their activities to observe his passage. Ancient ruins half reclaimed by sentient vegetation. Throughout, Naruto sensed the collective awareness of the primordial forest evaluating his worthiness through criteria he couldn't fully comprehend. The second beast proved more challenging to locate, its position changing erratically despite maintaining consistent distance. Eventually, Naruto tracked it to the shores of a perfect circular lake at the grove's northern boundary. The water's surface rippled with unnatural patterns, suggesting movement beneath. Approach with extreme caution, Artemis advised. Disembodied presence stronger near the water. The hydrometer changes form with mercurial unpredictability. As if responding to her warning, the lake's surface bulged upward. Water coalesced into solid form, a serpentine creature with multiple heads resembling eastern dragons, each crowned with horns of ice. Its body continuously flowed between liquid and solid states, maintaining general shape while constantly reforming. Intelligent eyes regarded Naruto with ancient calculation. The second hunt begins, announced a voice from across the lake, Apollo materializing on the opposite shore. His divine radiance almost painful to behold. Let us see how the supposed celestial air fares against water when his power derives from light. The god's presence changed the encounter's dynamic immediately. The hydrometer responded to Apollo's arrival with increased aggression, multiple heads hissing challenges as its body expanded to monstrous proportions. Clearly, Apollo had come to ensure maximum difficulty. My brother exceeds his authority, Artemis's voice noted with evident displeasure. But the trial continues regardless. Naruto assessed his options quickly. Unlike the Sunlion, this creature exhibited intelligence beyond animal instinct. Its shifting nature made physical restraint impossible, while its watery composition potentially neutralized light-based attacks. Direct confrontation seemed equally futile. The beast's multiple heads could attack from various angles simultaneously. Inspiration struck as he recalled the celestial compass's star maps. Divine creatures existed within cosmic patterns. Perhaps this one's nature could be influenced by reconfiguring its internal structure rather than attacking its external form. Concentrating intensely, Naruto traced complex patterns in the air, constellations connecting to the hydrometer's essential nature. Golden light formed lines between points, creating a three-dimensional matrix that gradually expanded to surround the creature. Rather than constraining physical movement, the pattern addressed the beast's underlying divine template. The hydrometer reacted with initial confusion followed by fascination. Its fluid body responded to the constellation matrix, flowing into more harmonious configuration. Multiple heads merged into three primary forms representing past, present, and future aspects. Its attacks ceased as it studied the golden framework with evident recognition. Extraordinary, Apollo commented, genuine surprise replacing his previous antagonism. He reconfigures its divine architecture rather than combating physical manifestation. Once the creature stabilized in its new form, Naruto approached the shoreline and knelt, placing his palm against the water's surface. The hydrometer extended one head toward this offering. touching its liquid snout to his hand. Information flowed between them, acknowledgement, respect, and something like benediction. The second beast yields to wisdom rather than force. Artemis observed with evident approval. Few hunters recognize the hydromander's fundamental nature as cosmic recorder. Apollo's expression remained unreadable as the water creature sank beneath the lake's surface, leaving barely a ripple. The third hunt awaits, he stated before vanishing in a flash of sunlight. Naruto rose from the shoreline, fatigue beginning to manifest. After 2 intensive energy manipulations, the final beast's signature registered at the grove's exact center, a void-like absence rather than positive energy, unsettlingly familiar. Be warned, Art, Amis's voice cautioned as he began moving south. The final creature is no natural celestial beast. Apollo has selected a corrupted entity, one touched by the same darkness that creates Skia. The Jew, RNEY to the grove's center required navigation through increasingly primordial terrain. Ancient trees grew so densely their canopies blocked all direct light, creating perpetual twilight at ground level. Vegetation took bizarre forms, occasionally moving with deliberate purpose to either hinder or assist his passage. Eventually, Naruto reached a perfectly circular clearing approximately 50 meters across. Unlike the vibrant life surrounding it, this space contained only withered grass and decayed vegetation. At its center stood what initially appeared to be a statue, a perfect recreation of a stag with magnificent antlers. Frozen in mid-stride, as Naruto approached, however, he realized the creature was alive but completely immobile, its form gradually turning to stone from hooves upward. The Chronos stag, Artemis identified, her disembodied presence stronger in this sacred space. Once guardian of temporal gateways, now corrupted by void energy that calcifies its divine essence. Apollo chose cruelly, this beast cannot be hunted in traditional sense. It requires healing beyond Olympian capability. Zeus appeared at the clearing's edge, accompanied by several deities including Apollo, Athena, and Hestia. The third trial addresses your claimed celestial heritage directly, the thunder god announced. If you are truly the heaven goddess's heir, demonstrate power over fundamental forces. Return this creature to its uncorrupted state, a task beyond mere divine ability. Succeed, and your nature cannot be questioned. Naruto approached the petrifying stag cautiously. Up close, the corruption became obvious, tiny fractures in reality itself spreading through the creature's form, replacing divine matter with void-like absence. The process had reached its torso, leaving only head and antlers still animate. In the beast's eyes, he recognized conscious awareness and profound suffering. This isn't a hunt, Naruto stated, anger rising at the creature's unnecessary torment. It's torture disguised as trial. It is opportunity to prove your alleged heritage, Apollo countered smoothly. Ordinary deities cannot reverse void corruption. If you are merely a god rather than true celestial heir, admit limitation now. The challenge was carefully constructed, forcing either failure or unprecedented display of power that would confirm celestial bloodline. Either outcome served Olympian politics rather than cosmic balance. Naruto knelt beside the suffering stag, placing one hand gently against its partially petrified neck. Through this contact, he sensed the corruptio's nature, identical to the Skia lieutenant's energy but more concentrated, targeted specifically at divine essence. The creature's temporal abilities made it particularly vulnerable, as time manipula. Chion created natural weak points in reality's fabric. I need to understand its uncorrupted state, Naruto said, looking toward Artemis who had materialized at the clearing's edge. Your goddess of wild creatures. Show me what it should be. Artemis hesitated, glancing toward Zeus who nodded reluctant permission. She approached, silver energy flowing around her as she knelt opposite Naruto. Placing her hand atop his, she shared divine knowledge, images of the Chronos stag in its prime, moving between moments in time, maintaining order in temporal flow, its magnificent form radiating prismatic. I see energy as it bounded through realities in between spaces. Thank you, Naruto said softly as the knowledge transfer completed. Understanding the creature's true nature provided crucial insight for healing rather than merely removing corruption. He closed his eyes, connecting more deeply with his internal light. The orb pendant and celestial compass resonated against his chest, responding to his focused intent. This task required more than the controlled energy manipulation he'd practiced with Hestia, It demanded fundamental restructuring of corrupted divine essence. Golden light gathered around his hands, gradually changing frequency until it vibrated at quantum level. This refined energy flowed into the stag, seeking void corruption's origin point. Naruto visualized the creature's true form, using that template to guide reconstruction of damaged divine matter. The process demanded precision beyond anything he'd attempted. Where void had erased divine essence, Naruto's light created new structure matched perfectly to surrounding tissue. Where corruption spread through temporal pathways, his energy established quarantine boundaries that isolated damage before replacing affected areas. Throughout, he maintained connection to the stag's consciousness, offering reassurance against the pain of reconstruction. Minutes stretched into an hour as Naruto worked methodically from hooves upward, restoring function and form with painstaking care. The watching deities remained silent, even Zeus apparently transfixed by the unprecedented display of creation energy. Only when the faint traces of corruption had been purged from magnificent antlers did Naruto finally withdraw his hands, golden light receding. For one breathless moment, nothing happened. Then the Chronos stag moved, tentatively at first, testing restored limbs, then with increasing confidence. Its form shimmered with renewed temporal energy, prismatic light dancing along its antlers. It regarded Naruto with unstoppable gratitude before bowing its majestic head in acknowledgement. Without warning, the beast then bounded forward, disappearing mid-leap into what appeared to be a tear in reality, returning to its proper dimension now that restoration allowed dimensional transition. Impossible, Apollo whispered, genuine awe replacing calculated challenge. Complete restoration of void-corrupted divine essence. Not even Zeus himself possesses such capability. The assembled deities erupted in excited discussion, many approaching for closer examination of the clearing where restoration had occurred. Zeus remained apart, his expression thunderous in literal sense as storm clouds gathered overhead. The third trial is complete, Artemis announced formally, her silver eyes reflecting genuine respect when they met Naruto's. The challenger has demonstrated power over fundamental forces beyond conventional divine capability. Indeed, Zeus acknowledged with obvious reluctance. The hunt of celestial beasts concludes with unprecedented success. Despite the positive outcome, his tone suggested displeasure rather than approval. Hestia approached as other deities dispersed, her warm presence providing welcome support as fatigue threatened to overwhelm Naruto. You've exceeded all expectations, she said quietly. Including, perhaps, your own. I didn't know I could do that, he admitted, atching golden energy still dancing across his fingertips. It felt natural somehow. Like remembering rather than learning. Celestial power works differently from conventional divine ability, Hestia explained. Where gods manipulate existing elements, celestial beings can restructure fundamental reality itself. She helped him rise on unsteady legs. Rest now. The final trial awaits tomorrow, the Forge of Creation. As they departed the clearing, Artemis fell into step beside them, her expression thoughtful. The council convenes tonight to discuss your performance. Many opinions have shifted after witnessing the stag's restoration. Including yours. Naruto asked directly. Artemis met his gaze with characteristic directness. I required no further convincing. But today's demonstration removes all reasonable doubt regarding your heritage. She glanced toward Olympus's gleaming spires. Unfortunately, reason rarely governs divine politics. They returned to Hestia's sanctuary as evening approached. The hearth goddess preparing restorative nectar infused with herbs known only to immortals. The golden liquid worked quickly, replenishing energy depleted by intensive creation work. The forge trial tomorrow will test different aspects of your ability, Hestia explained as color returned to Naruto's features. Where healing the stag required precision and restoration, the forge demands manifestation of entirely new creation. Creating something from nothing, he questioned, sipping the rejuvenating beverage. Not precisely nothing, Artemis corrected, having remained despite protocol suggesting she should report to the council. Rather, converting pure divine will into physical reality, condensing thought into matter, concept into substance. All deities possess creation ability to varying degrees. Hestia added, Zeus commands lightning, Poseidon shapes water, I maintain sacred flame. But these represent manipulation rather than true creation. The Forged W. Ill-demand materialization without existing medium, a capacity unique to genuine creators. Conversation paused as a disturbance rippled through Olympus, distant shouting followed by the unmistakable crash of thunder. Artemis tensed, immediately alert to potential threat. The council deliberations grow heated, she observed. Unusual even by Olympian standards. Your success disrupts carefully maintained power structures. Hestia explained to Naruto. For millennia, Zeus has ruled unchallenged as supreme deity of this region. The prophecy suggests new hierarchy with the celestial emperor above traditional pantheon rulers. I have no interest in anyone's throne, Naruto stated firmly. I just want to understand my nature and why shadow creatures hunted me. Politics rarely concerns itself with individual intentions. Artemis noted dryly. Your very existence represents change. That alone creates opposition regardless of personal ambition. Their discussion continued into evening. Hestia and Artemis providing context for Olympian politics while helping Naruto refine his creation abilities through increasingly complex exercises. By nightfall, he could manifest small objects of temporary substance, constructs of light given brief physical form. Progress, Hestia praised as Naruto successfully created a miniature lotus blossom identical to those from Mizuhama's ponds, Compel. Eat with physical substance that held water droplets on its petals. The forge will demand larger scale but identical principle. A sharp knock interrupted their session. The sanctuary door opened to reveal Athena. Her expression grave beneath a formal helm rarely worn within Olympus itself. The council requests your presence, she announced, addressing Naruto directly. Immediately and alone, Artemis rose in automatic protest. The protocols state rest between trials. He's demonstrated exceptional ability already today. This isn't related to the trials, Athena interrupted. A situati on has developed requiring his direct participation. Her gray eyes conveyed silent warning to both goddesses. The decision comes directly from Zeus. Naruto exchanged concerned glances with his divine mentors before standing. I'll come, he agreed, recognizing the futility of resistance within Zeus's domain. Athena led him through Olympus's nighttime splendor toward the central citadel. Unlike the amphitheater where previous council sessions occurred, their destination proved to be Zeus's personal throne room, a vast chamber where lightning arced continuously between crystalline columns, thunder rumbling in perfect counterpoint to emphasize divine authority. The Olympian Council awaited in full assembly, their expressions ranging from curiosity to outright hostility. Most significant was the addition of an unexpected figure, a warrior deity whose scarred features and blood-red armor identified him instantly as Ares, god of war. Naruto Uzumaki, Zeus greeted from his central throne, voice deliberately neutral. An unexpected development requires your attention. What development? Naruto asked directly, maintaining composure despite the obviously staged confrontation. In answer, Ares stepped forward, dragging a struggling captive. Naruto's heart froze as he recognized Kenji, the young fisherman from the Kajiki, somehow transported to Olympus despite having been in Mizuhama during the shadow attack. This mortal claims acquaintance, Ares announced, shoving the terrified young man forward. Found attempting to enter Olympus through unauthorized means, babbling about shadow creatures and golden light. Kenji looked up, recognition flooding his features. Naruto. The shadows, they're everywhere. The whole coast is overrun. His voice broke with obvious trauma. You disappeared with that silver woman. And then more creatures came, bigger ones with those horned heads. Alarmed murmurs spread through the assembled deities. Zeus raised his hand for silence. You recognize this mortal, he demanded of Naruto. Kenji was youngest crewman aboard my fishing vessel, Naruto confirmed, moving toward his friend only to have Ares block his path. How did he reach Olympus? The entrance requires divine guidance. An excellent question, Zeus agreed with suspicious mildness. One that suggests concerning possibilities. Perhaps shadow lieutenants now possess tracking ability previously unknown. Perhaps they followed your energy signature despite supposedly secure dimensional boundaries. The implication became clear. Zeus suggested Naruto had inadvertently led void creatures to divine doorsteps, supporting the narrative that his presence threatened Olympian security. Or perhaps, came Artemis's voice as she entered the chamber despite lack of invitation. Certain parties deliberately transported a mortal witness to manipulate this scenario. her silver gaze fixed accusingly on Ares, who merely smiled with predatory amusement. Enough speculation, Zeus commanded. The fact remains that void incursions increased dramatically following your awakening, Naruto Uzumaki. Multiple coastal settlements now report shadow manifestations where none previously existed. I didn't create these creatures, Naruto protested. If anything, my presence helps combat them. You witnessed the stag's restoration. I can reverse void corruption. In controlled circumstances, perhaps, Zeus countered. But what of widespread manifestations? What of the lieutenants now apparently hunting you across realms? Your very presence endangers divine stability. Hestia appeared beside Artemis. Her normally gentle demeanor hardened with rare anger. This proceeding violates established protocol, brother. The challenger has right to complete all trials before judgment. Extraordinary circumstances demand extraordinary measures, Zeus replied dismissively. The council has voted to suspend remaining trials in favor of immediate resolution. Naruto glanced around the chamber, noting which deities avoided his gaze, clear indication of how the vote had proceeded. Only Artemis, Hestia, and surprisingly Athena showed any sign of disagreement with Zeus's pronouncement. What resolution? Naruto asked, though he suspected the answer. Exile, Zeus stated flatly. You will be returned to the mortal realm, not your homeland, which now faces void corruption, but I stand territory beyond shadow influence. Your memories of Olympus will remain intact as warning against future divine interference. This compromise satisfies both security concerns and acknowledgement of your partial divine heritage. Exile without completing the trials denies his celestial birthright, Hestia objected. The prophecy specifically. Prophecies are subject to interpretation, Zeus interrupted firmly. The council majority has determined that cosmic stability takes precedence over literal adherence to ancient predictions. Naruto's attention remained with Kenji, who seemed increasingly disoriented in divine presence. What about my friend? He's witnessed too much for simple return to mortal life. His memories will be adjusted, Zeus stated dispassionately. As for other survivors from your village, appropriate arrangements will be made for their resettlement. So your solution is to discard potential allies against increasing void incursions? Artemis questioned incredulously. When we've just confirmed existence of someone who can actually reverse corruption. My solution, Zeus thundered, lightning intensifying around his throne, is to protect divine order from destabilizing influences. The void incursions will be addressed through traditional pantheon defenses, as they have been for millennia. The chamber fell silent as divine wills lashed Zeus's absolute authority against Artemis's principled objection. In that tense moment, Naruto suddenly understood the true nature of the confrontation. Zeus feared not just prophesied change demonstration that traditional pantheons couldn't effectively combat void corruption without celestial intervention. The successful healing of the Chronos stag had confirmed his worst fears, that conventional divine power had limitations the heaven goddess's heir could transcend. I accept exile, Naruto stated quietly, surprising everyone including his defenders. On one condition. Kenji comes with me, memories intact. He's earned the right to understand what destroyed his home. Zeus considered this, clearly recognizing the concession as face-saving opportunity. Agreed, with stipulation, that you both remain within boundaries to be established. Violation of those boundaries will result in more permanent consequences. And the artifacts, Naruto pressed, touching the orb pendant and celestial compass concealed beneath his tunic. Are they part of my exile? Zeus's expression darkened momentarily before diplomatic necessity reasserted itself. The artifacts responded to your celestial signature. They remain in your possession as acknowledgement of partial validation through completed trials. With terms established, the council session concluded abruptly. Guards escorted Naruto and Kenji to preparation chambers where Hestia awaited, her expression somber. This outcome was orchestrated from the moment you restored the stag, she confirmed quietly. Zeus feared Completon. The Forge trial would provide irrefutable confirmation of your heritage. It doesn't matter, Naruto replied, surprisingly calm given the circumstances. Olympian politics are irrelevant to my actual purpose. Hestia studied him with ancient eyes that saw beyond surface resignation. You expected this outcome, she realized. Perhaps even welcomed it. Exile with knowledge serves better than constrained observation here. He acknowledged. The artifacts already showed me paths between realms that don't require Olympian permission. Zeus hasn't prevented anything, he's merely demonstrated the prophecy's accuracy regarding fractured divine governance. Artemis entered the chamber, bow slung across her back and traveling gear already prepared. The transport to mortal realm departs in 20 minutes, she announced. Zeus assigned Apollo as escort to ensure compliance with exile terms. And yet you appear equipped for journey rather than farewell, Naruto observed with faint smile. Artemis's expression remained professionally neutral, though determination flashed in silver eyes. As goddess of the hunt, I track threats to natural order. The void incursions represent precisely such threat, one that coincidentally follows your prophesied awakening. My duty requires monitoring this connection directly. You're defying the council, Hestia noted without judgment. Zeus will not regard such independence lightly. I serve cosmic balance above Olympian politics, Artemis stated firmly. If that constitutes defiance, so be it. Kenji watched this exchange with undisguised confusion, still processing his abrupt transition from terror to divine politics. I don't understand any of this, he admitted when attention turned his direction. But shadow creatures destroyed everything we knew, Naruto. If following you means learning how to fight them, I'm committed. Preparations concluded quickly, supplies gathered for extended journey through mortal territories. Apollo arrived to oversee their departure. His expression unreadable though tension radiated from his divine form. Eastern lands beyond Olympian influence, he informed them coldly. Specifically, the islands mortals call Japan. Far enough to discourage return, close enough to regions already experiencing void manifestation that your presence creates minimal additional disruption. Japan, Naruto repeated, exchanging meaningful glances with Artemis. The celestial compass had indicated another artifact hidden in Japanese divine territory, making Zeus's chosen exile location either cosmic coincidence or evidence of greater design beyond Olympian understanding. You exceed your authority, sister, Apollo addressed Artemis directly. Zeus expressly limited escort to myself and assigned guards. I exceed nothing, she countered smoothly. My domain includes wilderness and wild creatures across all territories. I go where hunting requires my presence. The siblings, confrontation crackled centuries of rivalry and opposing philosophies. Eventually Apollo relented with poor grace, recognizing the political complications of directly challenging the goddess of the hunt regarding her proper domain. Their departure from Olympus occurred without ceremony, a simple dimensional fold that transferred them instantly from divine splendor to mortal forest at the base of Mount Fuji. Apollo Pr. Ovided minimal explanation of boundary limitations before disappearing in a flash of blinding light, clearly eager to report Artemis's insubordination to Zeus. Left alone in Japanese twilight, Naruto surveyed their situation with calm assessment rather than disappointment. Exile from Olympus had never been his goal, but neither did it prevent his emerging understanding of purpose. The artifact's arm against his chest confirmed direction even as they revealed new capabilities. What now? Kenji asked, overwhelmed but adapting with admirable resilience to cosmic revelations. Artemis gazed eastward, silver eyes reflecting moonlight as she evaluated their position. Now we enter Takamagahara, the Japanese divine realm. If the pattern holds, another artifact awaits there, guarded by gods who may prove either allies or obstacles. And the shadows, Kenji pressed. The creatures that destroyed Mizuhama. We fight them wherever found, Naruto answered, golden light briefly illuminating his determined expression. Whether Olympus acknowledges it or not, the void incursions represent existential threat to all realms. The prophecy speaks truth. Fractured pantheons must unite against common enemy. Artemis nodded approval at his clarity of purpose. Then our path forward is clear, if challenging. We seek alliance with the Japanese kami while locating the next artifact. Zeus's exile unwittingly places us precisely where cosmic necessity demands. As night descended fully, Naruto gazed up at stars suddenly more meaningful given his expanding awareness of cosmic structure. Somewhere beyond conventional perception, divine realms maintained delicate balance despite increasing void corruption. Whether acknowledged officially or not, his awakening represented fundamental change to that cosmic equation. The prophecy mentioned trials of darkness forging the emperor's crown, he mused aloud. Perhaps exile itself constitutes such trial, separation from conventional divine authority. Forcing independent development of celestial potential. An insightful interpretation, Artemis agreed. Especially considering Zeus rejected your claims partially from fear of precisely such potential. Despite present challenges, Naruto felt strange optimism as golden light danced beneath his skin. The orphaned fisherman from Mizuhama had undergone profound transformation, yet core identity remained intact: compassion for others. Determination against adversity, willingness to sacrifice comfort for greater purpose. Whether celestial emperor of prophecy or simply determined opponent of encroaching void, his path stretched before him with unexpected clarity despite Olympian rejection. The first steps of that journey began now, in Japanese territory with unexpected companions and NDING awareness of cosmic responsibility. The future remained unwritten, but exile had merely redirected rather than ended the unfolding story of awakening light. Chapter 2 and Chapter 3, Eastern Horizons. Morning mist clung to ancient cedars as Naruto, Artemis, and Kenji ascended the winding path toward Hakone Shrine. 6 days had passed since their unceremonious exile from Olympus, 6 days of UTIOUS travel through a Japan both familiar and alien to Naruto's awakening senses. Where once he might have seen only forest, he now perceived layered realms of existence overlapping physical reality. Spirits dwelled in venerable trees. Minor kami inhabited streams and stones. The very air thrummed with different divine frequencies than Greece's golden resonance. The boundary thins here, Artemis observed, pausing beside a moss-covered torii gate that straddled the mountain path. Silver moonlight seemed to cling to her form even in daylight, a reminder of her divine domain. Takamagahara's primary entrance lies beyond the mortal shrine. Kenji adjusted the pack containing their limited supplies, dark circles beneath his eyes testifying to nights plagued by nightmares of shadow creatures. Will these Japanese gods welcome us any better than Zeus did? The kami maintain different relationships with cosmic hierarchy, Artemis replied, selecting her words with diplomatic precision. Quote, while Zeus actively resists outside authority, Takamagahara's rulers historically acknowledge the heaven goddess as supreme creator. Whether that translates to welcoming her heir remains uncertain. Naruto approached the torii gate, sensing subtle energies woven into its seemingly mundane structure. The pendant against his chest, the orb of celestial light, pulsed with increasing frequency as he neared the threshold. The artifact recognizes this place, he noted, golden light briefly illuminating his fingertips as he traced ancient characters carved into the weathered wood. Not as containing another fragment, but a significant waypoint. Since leaving Olympus, he developed greater synchronization with the artifacts. The orb functioned as both cosmic compass and repository of fragmentary memories. While the celestial disk revealed pathways between realms visible only to his evolving perception. Together, they painted an incomplete but expanding map of his prophesied journey. Beyond the gate lies danger, came an unexpected voice from behind them, a young woman in traditional shrine maiden attire who had approached without triggering Artemis's preternatural awareness. Those who cross unprepared risk spiritual dissolution. The trio turned to face the newcomer, Artemis's hand instinctively moving toward her bow before halting at an imperceptible gesture from Naruto. Something about this shrine maiden radiated subtle power beneath carefully maintained humanity, neither fully mortal nor conventionally divine. We seek audience with Takamagahara's rulers, Naruto stated, meeting the woman's evaluating gaze directly. I know who you are, son of heaven, she interrupted, dark eyes reflecting golden sparks that mirrored his own contained light. Your awakening ripples across all divine realms, causing particular disruption in domains with close historical connection to the celestial court. Kenji stepped protectively closer to Naruto, wariness evident in his posture. 6 days traveling with divine beings had accelerated his adaptation to cosmic realities but heightened rather than diminished his protective instincts toward his friend. You have us at a disadvantage, Artemis noted, her tone carrying subtle warning despite diplomatic phrasing. You know our purpose yet withhold your own identity. A smile touched the shrine maiden's lips, fleeting but genuine. Forgive my discourtesy. I am Aim no Uzume, kami of dawn and revelry, though I prefer Uzume in casual conversation. She bowed with formal precision. I serve as occasional messing. Between realms when circumstances warrant direct intervention. Naruto returned her bow, recalling fragmentary knowledge surfacing with increasing frequency since his awakening. Uzume held signify, cant position in Japanese mythology, the dawn goddess whose dance had once lured Amaterasu from self-imposed isolation, restoring light to creation. Your presence suggests our arrival was anticipated, he observed. More accurately, detected, Uzume corrected. Takamagahara monitors dimensional disturbances with particular attention to Olympian activities. Apollo's involvement in your transition registered immediately. Artemis frowned at mention of her brother. Does Takamagahara maintain regular communication with Olympus? The divine realms observe each other while maintaining careful distance, Uzume explained, gesturing for them to follow as she continued up the path. Recent void incursions have necessitated more active monitoring of cross-realm movements. They passed beneath the Torii Gate, reality subtly shifting around them. Colors intensified, scents sharpened, sounds carried impossible clarity. The physical shrine buildings ahead remained visible but now appeared as air shadows of far grander structures overlaid upon them, the true divine architecture of Takamagahara bleeding through mortal perception. The shadows attack here too, Kenji noted, pointing toward scorched patches on nearby trees that matched destruction patterns from Mizuhama. Uzume nodded, expression darkening. Skia manifestations increased dramatically throughout Japan in recent months. Coastal regions suffer worst, but nowhere remains entirely free of corruption. She cast a meaningful glance toward Naruto. Their activity intensified notably following your awakening. Correlation isn't causation, Artemis countered immediately. The void entities seek him because he threatens them, not because he creates them. A distinction Takamagahara's rulers will carefully evaluate, Uzume acknowledged as they reached the shrine's inner courtyard. Unlike its modest physical appearance, the spiritual reality of the shrine revealed architectural splendor that rivaled Olympus while essing entirely different aesthetic principles. Where Greek divine architecture emphasized imposing grandeur through scale and perfectionism, Japanese divine construction created harmony through asymmetrical balance and intentional simplicity. Massive wooden structures incorporated natural elements rather than dominating them, creating seamless transition between built environment and surrounding forest. At the courtyard's center stood a circular pool of water so perfectly still it resembled polished obsidian. Golden carp moved beneath its surface, their patterns forming complex configurations that shifted with apparent purpose. The mirror pool, Uzume identified, approaching its edge. One of several transitions to Takamagahara proper. For mortals, crossing requires sponsorship by a kami. She looked meaningfully at Kenji. I'm not leaving him behind, Naruto stated firmly, anticipating the implied separation. Fortunately, that choice isn't necessary, Uzume replied with unexpected accommodation. Your companion witnessed void manifestation firsthand and survived, valuable perspective few mortals possess. Takamagahara's council specifically requested his inclusion. Relief visibly washed over Kenji's features, though tension remained in his shoulders. Will I understand anything that happens there? The Greek gods were overwhelming enough. Divine manifestations in Takamagahara differ from Olympian presentations, Uzume explained, her tone gentler toward the mortal's concerns. Our forms remain more comprehensible to human perception, though certain presences may still challenge mortal sensibility. She approached the pool's edge, gesturing for them to form a circle around its perimeter. Join hands, she instructed. The transition requires connected energy to transport multiple travelers simultaneously. As their circle completed, the pool's surface rippled without external cause. Reflected in its depths appeared not their own images but a grand court. Yard surrounded by cherry trees in perpetual bloom, their pink petals swirling in patterns too deliberate for natural wind. Step forward together, Uzume directed. The water serves as boundary rather than substance. Naruto moved first, golden light instinctively gathering around him as interdimensional transition triggered protective response. Artemis matched his motion precisely, silver energy harmonizing with his gold in familiar synchronization they'd developed since first combining powers against the Shadow Lieutenant. Kenji hesitated momentarily before faith in his companion's overcome. Instinctive fear of stepping into mysterious reflections. Transition occurred without disorientation. One moment they stood at the physical shrine's pool, the next they occupied the reflected courtyard of Takamagahara. Cherry blossoms drifted around them, each petal radiating subtle divine energy that contributed to the realm's overall harmony. Unlike Olympus's imposing acropolis that dominated its surroundings, Takamagahara's divine center integrated seamlessly with natural landscape. Buildings constructed from materials that simultaneously appeared as traditional wood and something more fundamental. Divine matter manifested through cultural aesthetic rather than literal substance. Mountains visible in the distance contained perfectly arranged forests, waterfalls, and cloud formations. Had revealed deliberate cosmic artistry beneath apparent natural randomness. "Welcome to the high plane of heaven," Uzume announced, releasing their hands as transition completed. "The council awaits in the Hall of Perfect Balance." As they followed their guide through Takamagahara's central complex, Naruto observed fundamental differences from Olympian divine architecture. Where Zeus emphasized personal glory through monumental construction, Japanese divine spaces created environments where individual ego yielded to collective harmony. No single structure dominated, rather, the arranged relationship between elements conveyed greater significance than individual components. Divine beings observed their passage with reactions ranging from curiosity to evident concern. Unlike Olympians' humanoid appearances, many kami manifested in forms that blended human characteristics with natural elements: flowing water comprising hair, bark-like skin, eyes containing miniature landscapes or celestial bodies. These partial transformations seemed less about intimidating display than expressing fundamental connection to their domains. "The Greek huntress who defied her pantheon," commented La Kami as they passed. Recognizable as Fujin by the wind bag carried across his shoulders, gusts occasionally escaping between his fingers. Zeus's thunder reached even our distant ears. "I serve Ko-Smic balance above political convenience," Artemis replied without breaking stride, though Naruto noted tension in her silver aura. "A principle Takamagahara generally respects," contributed another passing kami, female, with flowing blue garments that behaved like water despite apparent solid form. Though some question whether the heaven goddess's air serves balance or disruption. Uzume led Hem toward the central structure, a pavilion whose proportions adhered to perfect mathematical relationships despite appearing deceptively simple. Its roof curved in precise arcs that mirrored celestial movements, supported by pillars incorporating all 5 traditional elements in balanced arrangement. "The hall awaits," she announced, pausing before massive doors crafted from divine cypress that radiated age beyond mortal comprehension. A caution before entering. Takamagahara operates through consensus rather than singular authority. The absence of dominant ruler creates both opportunity and challenge for your objectives. "Meaning we'll face committee rather than king," Naruto interpreted, golden light briefly illuminating his features as anticipation triggered autonomic response. "H with independent agenda regarding my presence." Uzume nodded approval at his understanding. "Precisely. While certain kami hold greater influence through seniority or domain significance," final deck. "Issues emerge through collective agreement rather than decree." The doors opened without visible mechanism, revealing a circular chamber arranged around central hearth containing perfectly balanced flame, neither consuming fuel nor producing smoke, yet radiating comfortable warmth throughout the space. Unlike Olympus's intimidating throne room, this chamber featured a circular arrangement where L positions held equal prominence around the central fire. Approximately 20 kami occupied these positions, their forms ranging from nearly human to abstract manifestations of their domains. Most significant was the empty position directly opposite the entrance, slightly elevated and illuminated by directed sunlight despite the chamber's otherwise uniform lighting. "Amaterasu Omikami's seat remains vacant," Artemis observed quietly. The sun goddess's absence suggests deliberate political statement. Before Uzume could respond, a deep voice addressed them from the assembly, male, authoritative without requiring volume for emphasis. "The heaven goddess's claimed heir arrives in Takamagahara without formal invitation," stated a kami whose dark appearance suggested night incarnate, eyes containing constellations that shifted with his movements. Accompanied by Olympian huntress in apparent defiance of her pantheon's ruling. Curious circumstances requiring explanation. "Lord Tsukuyomi," Uzume acknowledged with respectful bow. I present Naruto Uzumaki, Artemis of Olympus, and Kenji of Mizuhama as requested by council directive following their boundary crossing. Tsukuyomi, God O.F. the moon and brother to the absent Amaterasu, studied them with analytical precision. Unlike emotional Zeus, his divine authority expressed through perfect self-containment rather than external display. Approach the hearth, he directed. Takamagahara evaluates through direct observation rather than intermediary report. The trio moved forward, positioning themselves beside the central flame W. Here all council members could observe them equally. Naruto noticed immediately how the fire responded to his proximity, flames shifting toward golden hue, reaching slightly higher when he stood nearest. The flame acknowledges celestial resonance, noted a female kami with features suggesting mountainous terrain contained within humanoid form. Consistent with heaven's offspring, though distinct from pure divinity. Yet carries shadow's touch as well, countered another council member, male, armored in traditional samurai attire that rippled with barely contained aggression. The void's corruption clings to him like distant echo. Quote, residual contact rather than inherent taint, corrected a third voice, feminine, precise, from a kami manifesting as elegant calligrapher whose ink stained phi. Ners continuously formed characters that dissolved into air. Diagnostic rather than symptomatic. Tsukuyomi raised his hand, establishing order through minimal gesture. We will hear their account directly before continuing evaluation. His constellation eyes fixed on Naruto with unnerving focus. Speak your purpose in Takamagahara, claimed heir of heaven. Naruto met the moon god's gaze without flinching. Golden light briefly illuminating his features as he addressed the assembly. I seek understanding of my awakening heritage, alliance against void incursions that threaten all realms, and guidance toward artifacts left by the heaven goddess to aid that purpose. Direct honesty, his instinctive approach since discovering his nature, served better than political maneuvering in this initial exchange. The kami valued harmony achieved through truth rather than convenience, their collective attention measuring not just his words but the energy patterns surrounding them. Artifacts, Tsukuyomi repeated with subtle emphasis. You possess celestial relics already. Not a question but observation. Naruto nodded, revealing the orb pendant and celestial compass disc. These responded to my awakening energy during shadow attacks on my village. They contain fragmentary knowledge and pathways between realms. Murmurs spread through the assembly as several kami leaned forward with increased interest. The armored samurai figure, whom Naruto now recognized as Hachiman, god of war, rose partially from his seat. Celestial artifacts activate after millennia of dormancy, coinciding with unprecedented void incursions. He noted, tone suggesting accusation beneath observation. Correlation demands scrutiny. Agreed, Naruto replied, surprising the war god with direct acknowledgement. The timing suggests orchestrated response to specific threat. Whether my awakening triggered increased void activity or was itself triggered by rising corruption remains uncertain. This balanced assessment earned approving nods from several council members. Tsukuyomi's expression remained unreadable, though the constellations in his eyes shifted to configuration suggesting thoughtful reconsideration. You claim celestial heritage yet manifested no divine awareness until recently, the moon god observed. Explain your mortal upbringing. I was raised as orphaned fisherman in coastal village of Mizuhama, Naruto explained. Glancing briefly toward Kenji who nodded encouragement. Unusual abilities manifested throughout childhood, light emission during emotional states, heightened perception of energy patterns. Physical capabilities exceeding normal human limitations. I suppressed these differences to maintain community acceptance until shadow creatures attacked 6 days ago. Mizuhama lies destroyed. Confirmed a water kami with sorrowful expression. My currents carried bodies to sacred shores. Few survivors remain. Kenji stepped forward despite obvious intimidation by the divine assembly. The shadows came specifically for Naruto, he stated with admirable steadiness. They ignored easier targets to pursue him. Whatever these gods believe about his heritage, the enemy clearly considers him significant threat. Quote, Artemis nodded approval at the mortal's accurate contribution before addressing the council herself. In Olympus, Naruto demonstrated abilities beyond conventional divine capacity, specifically healing void corruption that Zeus's pantheon considered irreversible. This capacity directly supports his celestial lineage claim. Olympus rejected such claim despite evidence. Tsukuyomi noted with subtle criticism. Zeus fears disruption to established hierarchy, a concern potentially shared by other pantheon rulers. Before further discussion could develop, the chamber's main doors opened without ceremonial announcement. Conversation ceased immediately as all attention shifted toward the new arrival. She entered without hurry, a female figure of such radiant presence that the chamber's illumination seemed temporarily diminished by comparison. Her kimono shimmered with colors beyond mortal spectrum, patterns depicting celestial movements across its surface. Black hair flowed like liquid obsidian to her feet, occasionally revealing itself as pure light merely presenting as tangible substance. Her features combined impossible beauty with intimate authority, perfection that demanded acknowledgement rather than mere appreciation. Most striking were her eyes, gold like Naruto's when he channeled power, but permanently illuminated with inner raw radiance that suggested barely contained cosmic force. Those eyes fixed immediately on the visitors, narrowing slightly as they assessed Naruto with uncomfortable intensity. Amaterasu Omikami, Tsukuyomi acknowledged with minimal bow. Your presence honors the council's deliberations. My presence becomes necessary when claimed celestial heirs enter my domain without proper introduction, she replied. Voice melodious despite evident displeasure, particularly when accompanied by representatives of pantheons that historically minimized Takamagahara's cosmic significance. Artemis stiffened at the implied criticism but maintained diplomatic silence. Naruto studied the sun goddess with growing fascination. Something about her energy signature resonated with his own in manner different from any deity he'd previously encountered. Where Zeus represented power through dominance and Hestia embodied divinity through nurturing creation, Amaterasu expressed divine nature through perfect integration of opposing forces, destruction and creation in continuous, harmonious cycle. Greetings, Amaterasu Omikami, he offered with formal bow expressing genuine respect rather than mere protocol. IAP. Apologize for irregular arrival in your domain. Circumstances rather than intention dictated our approach. The sun goddess approached with measured grace, her movement creating rippling harmonics in the chamber's ambient energy. She circled Naruto slowly, examining his aura with critical assessment that reminded him of Artemis's initial evaluation, professional rather than personal. You illuminate with celestial frequency, she acknowledged after completing her circuit. Similar to heaven's historical resonance, yet distinctly individualized. Interesting anomaly requiring thorough investigation. Investigation suggests suspicion, Artemis noted carefully. While caution serves cosmic security, Naruto has demonstrated consistent alignment with creation rather than corruption. Amaterasu's radiant gaze shifted to the huntress. Evaluation no less intense. Artemis of Olympus, your presence alongside the claimed heir contradicts your pantheon's official position. Personal conviction or political maneuvering. Direct observation serves truth better than distant speculation, Artemis replied with diplomatic precision. My domain includes protection of wilderness against unnatural threats. The void incursions qualify as precisely such threat, with direct connection to this individual's awakening. Amaterasu seemed to accept this explanation, returning her attention to Naruto. Quote, you seek artifacts connected to your heritage. Takamagahara contains ancient relics predating established pantheons. Which specifically draws you to our realm? Naruto reached for the celestial compass, allowing its energies to guide his response. Golden light flowed between his fingers as the disc activated, projecting stellar cartography into visible space between them. Constellations formed, shifted, then stabilized into specific configuration that highlighted Takamagahara's position in cosmic architecture. The mirror of truth, he stated with certainty derived from the artifact's guidance rather than conscious knowledge. Created by the heaven goddess as reflection of absolute reality, capable of dispelling illusion including void corruption. Historical records suggest it was Entrus Ted to Takamagahara during the last cosmic convergence. Amaterasu's expression remained unreadable, though subtle shifts in her radiant aura suggested surprise at his specific identification. The Yata no Kagami, she acknowledged. Using the mirror's Japanese designation, sacred treasure traditionally associated with imperial regalia rather than foreign prophecy. Different cultural interpretations of singular cosmic reality. Tsukuyomi suggested with diplomatic neutrality. The mirror's origin predates established pantheon boundaries. Its purpose transcends territorial designation. The sun goddess considered this divine light fluctuating around her as she processed competing considerations. Finally, she addressed the full council rather than individuals. Takamagahara acknowledged legitimate interest in investigating claimed celestial lineage, she declared with authority that silenced potential objections. The void incursions threaten all realms equally. If this individual offers effective countermeasure through heritage or ability, proper evaluation serves collective security. Her gaze returned to Naruto, intensity undiminished. However, access to sacred artifacts requires demonstration of worthiness beyond mere hereditary claim. Takamagahara will establish appropriate trials to evaluate both capability and character before granting access to the mirror. More tests. Kenji protested before remembering his place among divine beings. Forgive me, but he already proved himself to the Greeks. Olympian standards reflect Olympian priorities, Amaterasu repla. Ed without hostility toward the mortal's outburst. Takamagahara maintains independent criteria for evaluating those who seek our sacred treasures. Naruto placed calming hand on Kenji's shoulder. Accept Takamagahara's right to establish appropriate challenges, he stated formally. Though time pressures mount as void corruption spreads through mortal domains. A valid concern, Tsukuyomi acknowledged. The first evaluation will begin immediately. The council requires direct demonstration of your purported ability to counter void corruption. Hachiman rose from his seat, armor shifting with sound like distant battle. Northern coastal villages suffer shadow infestation that resists conventional purification. If his light truly counters corruption, practical application will demonstrate more effectively than controlled examination. Amaterasu nodded agreement. Prepare for immediate departure to Matsushima region. Uzume will guide your group, while I personally observe your methods against active corruption. You'll accompany us directly, Artemis questioned with evident surprise. Unlike Olympian rulers who delegated field observation, Amaterasu proposed first-hand involvement. Direct assessment eliminates interpretive distortion, the sun goddess replied simply. Particularly with capabilities allegedly beyond conventional divine parameters. With arrangements established, the council session concluded. Uzume guided them from the chamber through Takamagahara's complex toward preparation areas where supplies awaited for their northern expedition. Throughout, Naruto remained acutely aware of Amaterasu following at deliberate distance, close enough for continuous observation but removed enough to emphasize evaluation rather than cooperation. She doesn't trust me, he noted quietly to Artemis as they collected equipment. She fears what you represent, the huntress corrected, checking her silver arrows with practiced precision. Amaterasu maintains perfect cosmic balance within her domain. Your existence suggests imminent disruption to established order, potentially necessary disruption, but threatening nonetheless. The sun goddess has maintained Kamagahara's stability since the heaven goddess entered stasis, Uzume added, overhearing their exchange. Where Zeus rules through dominance, Amaterasu governs through perfect embodiment of her domain's principles, illumination, truth, order. Cosmic realignment challenges foundations of that established system. Kenji, adjusting supplies with practical efficiency developed through years at sea, lanced toward where Amaterasu waited beyond hearing range. She's terrifying, he admitted quietly. But different from Zeus. Less angry, more absolute. Accurate assessment, Artemis Acknowledged. DGED with approval for the mortal's perception. Olympians express divinity through heightened personality traits. Zeus through dominance, Apollo through perfection, myself through wilderness connection. Takamagahara's kami embody fundamental cosmic principles with individual personality as secondary expression rather than primary manifestation. Their preparations completed quickly, transition to mortal realm occurring through different mechanism than their arrival, a pathway resembling Golden Bridge that connected divine space directly to northern Japan without intermediate dimensional shifting. As they crossed this construct, reality gradually transformed from Takamagahara's perfect harmony to increasingly disrupted mortal environment. The contrast shocked Naruto despite intellectual preparation. Where Takamagahara maintained perfect balance, the coastal region they entered suffered obvious corruption. Plants withered unnaturally, wildlife absent, atmospheric pressure distorted by void influence. Most disturbing were black crystalline formations protruding from otherwise natural landscape, physical manifestations of corruption taking root in material reality. Shadow crystals, Artemis identified with evident concern. Final stage of void manifestation before permanent reality corruption. Olympus has documented similar formations near dimensional boundaries but never this extensively in mortal domains. Amaterasu moved ahead, her divine radiance creating temporary zone of purification around her immediate vicinity. The infestation progresses more rapidly than reported. She noted with clinical precision that nonetheless conveyed genuine concern. Conventional purification rituals produced temporary effect at best. They followed coastal path toward fishing village. Visible in near distance, traditional structures partially abandoned, remaining inhabitants moving with unnatural lethargy suggesting early stages of void influence. As they approached, Naruto detected energy patterns similar to Mizuhama's destruction but more advanced, systematic corruption rather than concentrated attack. The shadows aren't just destroying, he observed as understanding crystallized. They're transforming territory for permanent occupation, converting reality itself to void-compatible environment. Amaterasu glanced back with fleeting expression suggesting reassessment of his perceptual abilities. Correct. Conventional divine intervention creates temporary reversal at best. The corruption resumes immediately following our departure. Because you're fighting symptoms rather than cause, Naruto realized. Golden light gathering instinctively around his hands as they entered corruption's stronger field. The shadow crystals aren't invasion points but anchors, maintain in connection to void realm that allows continuous corruption flow. Kenji stayed close, years of facing ocean storms having prepared him for maintaining composure in dangerous situations. Can you destroy these anchor crystals? He asked practically. Cut the connection at its source. Destruction alone proves ineffective, Amaterasu stated, approaching largest crystal formation at village perimeter. The void simply reestablishes connection through dimensional weak points created by initial corruption. Permanent reversal requires replacing void influence with creation energy of equal persistent duration. Naruto studied the crystal formation with expanding perception, seeing beyond physical manifestation to interdimensional connections maintained through its structure. The formation resembled wound in reality itself, leaking void essence into surrounding environment through sustained connection to somewhere else, the Void Empress's domain presumably. I need to understand the corruption's fundamental structure, he said, turning to Artemis. Similar to the Chronos stag's healing, but addressing environment rather than individual entity. The huntress nodded understanding. He principle remains consistent. Replace corruption with creation by addressing fundamental pattern rather than surface manifestation. Amaterasu watched this exchange with increasing interest, her divine perception clearly noting their established synchronicity from previous collaborative efforts. You propose systematic replacement rather than oppositional counterforce, she observed. Theoretic. Allies sound but requiring creation energy beyond conventional divine capability. Which is precisely what he demonstrated in Olympus, Artemis confirmed with subtle satisfaction at the sun goddess's accurate assessment. Not merely manipulating existing elements but restructuring fundamental reality patterns. Naruto approached the crystal formation, extending awareness beyond physical senses to dimensional understanding provided by awakening heritage. The corruption operated through systematic inversion of creation principles, replacing light with darkness, order with chaos, connection with isolation. Each crystal served as reality anchor maintaining specific void frequency that gradually reconfigured surrounding environment to match interdimensional source. I need to establish counter frequency, he explained. Golden light gathering more intensely around him as understanding translated to implementation. Not destroying the crystal but transforming its fundamental resonance from void to creation. Without waiting for divine approval, he placed both hands directly against the black crystal's surface. Immediate reaction triggered, void energy attempting to corrupt his own light through direct contact. Unlike previous shadow encounters, however, this corruption found no purchase in his awakened celestial energy. Instead, golden light flowed into the crystal structure, identifying void pattern before systematically inverting its frequency. The process required intense concentration as Naruto essentially rewrote reality's local operating principles. Where corruption had established void-based function, he reinstated creation-based alternatives, light, connection, harmony, while maintaining existing structure to prevent dimensional collapse. Rather than destroying corruption, He transformed it into purification mechanism that reversed its original function. The black crystal gradually changed coloration, darkness yielding to transparency, then developing golden luminescence from within. Its structure remained intact but fundamentally altered, now radiating purification energy that countered surrounding corruption. Most significantly, the interdimensional connect ion remained but operated in reverse, pulling void essence back toward source while projecting creation energy into affected environment. Extraordinary, Uzume whispered, witnessing transformation at conventional divine ability considered impossible. He's inverting corruption itself, using existing channels to distribute counter-influence. Amaterasu moved closer, her divine perception fully engaged in analyzing methodology. The pattern appears self-sustaining, she noted with carefully controlled surprise. Continuing purification without requiring continuous divine presence. Artemis nodded confirmation. The same principle he applied to the Chronos stag, not merely removing corruption but establishing self-perpetuating restoration using corruption's own framework against itself. Naruto completed the transformation, stepping back as golden crystal continued radiating purification throughout surrounding area. Already, withered vegetation showed signs of recovery, atmosphere clearing as void influence receded. The crystal had become permanent counter-anchor, maintaining creation influence with same persistent duration that corruption had previously established. One down, Kenji observed practically, gesturing toward several additional black formations visible throughout the village. How many more before the area's completely protected? Each purified crystal extends effective range proportional to original corruption density, Naruto explained, understanding flowing through awakened intuition rather than conscious analysis. This village requires conversion of approximately 7 primary formations to establish self-sustaining purification network. Amaterasu studied him with intensified interest, her divine radiance briefly harmonizing with his golden light in unconscious resonance. You understand the process intuitively rather than through trained application, she observed. Characteristic of inherent rather than acquired ability. I perceive patterns others consider separate as fundamentally connected, Naruto attempted to explain, finding precise words inadequate for conceptual understanding that operated beyond conventional perception. Eruption follows systematic principles identical to creation but inverted through opposing intention. Recognizing the pattern allows reversing the inversion. The sun goddess considered this explanation. Divine light fluctuating around her as she processed implications. Continue, she finally directed, gesture encompassing remaining corruption sites. Takamagahara requires comprehensive demonstration before evaluating artifact access. Quote, they proceeded through the village methodically, Naruto addressing each major crystal formation while Artemis and Uzume handled smaller manifestations through conventional purification. Kenji assisted villagers directly, helping evacuate weakened individuals to areas already cleansed, displaying compassionate practicality that complemented divine intervention with necessary human connection. Throughout, Amaterasu observed with analytical precision, occasionally asking clarifying questions that revealed sophisticated understanding of interdimensional mechanics. Her initial skepticism gradually yielded to professional assessment of genuine capability, though reserved judgment remained evident in her carefully maintained distance. By sunset, the village stood fully cleansed, golden crystals pulsing with purification energy that gradually extended influence throughout surrounding countryside. Villagers emerged from shelters with expressions combining religious awe with practical relief. Many bowing deeply as they approached their divine saviors. 7 generations our family has tended this shore, stated elderly headman as he addressed Amaterasu directly. Apparently recognizing her divine nature despite human disguise she'd adopted during intervention. Never have we witnessed corruption that resisted sacred rites until shadows came last season. Your blessing restores ancestral harmony, great Kami. Amaterasu acknowledged his gratitude with formal acceptance that nonetheless maintained divine separation. The restored balance requires maintenance through traditional observance, she instructed. Maintain shrine protocols established by your ancestors. They provide ongoing connection to divine protection. As villagers dispersed, to implement immediate recovery efforts, Naruto found moment for quiet observation of surrounding landscape. Purification spread visibly through environment, plants straightening, natural colors intensifying. Wildlife gradually returning to reclaimed territory. The golden crystals functioned as intended, converting corruption's own systematic spread into mechanism for accelerated restoration. "You've impressed her," Artemis noted quietly, joining him on rocky outcropping overlooking newly purified harbor. Though she'll never admit it directly. Naruto glanced toward where Amaterasu conversed with Uzume. Their divine auras interacting with subtle communication beyond verbal exchange. Her approval matters less than effective countermeasure against spreading corruption. This village represents one small victory against systematic threat affecting all realms. Precisely the perspective that distinguishes you from conventional divine politics, Artemis observed with approval. Zeus refuses cooperation that might diminish perceived authority. Amaterasu evaluates effectiveness before considering political implications. You prioritize practical outcome over positional advantage. The fisherman's perspective, Naruto replied with faint smile. Storms don't care about human hierarchies or divine politics. Survival requires addressing reality as it exists rather than as we wish it to be. Kenji joined them, exhaustion evident in his posture though satisfaction gleamed in his eyes. The villagers will recover, he reported. Similar to Mizuhama's people, practical, resilient. Have already incorporated golden light into local protective prayers. Before further discussion developed, Amaterasu approached their position, her movement graceful despite obvious deliberate entral moderating divine presence around mortal surroundings. For first time since their introduction, her expression conveyed something beyond analytical assessment, genuine, if reserved, recognition. Takamagahara acknowledges effective demonstration against void corruption, she stated formally. Your method exceeds conventional divine intervention through fundamental reality restructuring rather than surface manifestation. This capability supports celestial heritage claim requiring further evaluation. Does this mean we can access the mirror? Kenji asked with characteristic directness at occasionally bypass divine diplomatic conventions. Amaterasu's gaze shifted briefly to the mortal, something like amusement flickering across otherwise composed features. Access to sacred artifacts requires completing established trials. However, today's demonstration accelerates evaluation process considerably. The corruption spreads faster than conventional response can address, Naruto noted. Gesturing toward horizon where distant shadows suggested additional infestation beyond their current position. Time constraints pressure all realms equally regardless of established protocol. Protocol exists precisely because cosmic power requires responsible application, Amaterasu countered, though without hostility. The mirror of truth reveals absolute reality without filtering or limitation, potentially dangerous capability in unprepared hands regardless of heritage claim. Artemis nodded reluctant agreement. Sacred artifacts carry inherent risks proportional to their power. Olympus established trials for similar protective purpose despite Zeus's political motivations. Then let us proceed with necessary evaluation without unnecessary delay, Naruto suggested, diplomatic wording masking practical urgency. Takamagahara's requirements balanced against cosmic necessity. Amaterasu considered this proposal with evident recalculation of prior assessment. We return to Takamagahara immediately for accelerated evaluation sequence, she decided. Today's demonstration establishes capability baseline justifying expedited process. Transition back to Divine Realm OCCU. RRED with minimal ceremony, Amaterasu creating direct pathway through reality layers that bypassed conventional travel requirements. Unlike previous dimensional shifts, her method created no disorientation, suggesting sophisticated control beyond Artemis's similar abilities. They arrived directly within Takamagahara's inner complex rather than peripheral entry point, specifically, within massive street. Rupture resembling traditional forge but scaled to divine proportions. Enormous hearths burned with multicolored flames producing no smoke yet radiating specific energy frequencies. Divine craftsman orked raw materials that defied conventional classification, substances representing fundamental cosmic elements rather than mere physical matter. The celestial forge, Amaterasu identified as they rotated through workshops where Kami created divine implements with methodical precision. Second evaluation occurs here, addressing creation aspect of your claimed heritage. Similar to Hephaestus's domain in Olympus, Artemis observed. Though clear differences marked Takamagahara's approach to divine crafting. Where Greek forge emphasized technological sophistication through mechanical complexity, Japanese divine crafting focused on material essence and spiritual alignment between creator and creation. They reached central chamber containing single hearth burning with perfectly white Florida. Fire without color yet containing all spectral possibilities in potential state. Beside this specialized forge waited kami of particularly ancient presence, male form suggesting elderly master craftsman. Though his movements displayed vigor belying apparent age. Naruto Uzumaki, I present Amasu Mara, divine smith of Takamagahara, Amaterasu announced with formality suggesting particular respect for this entity's position. He oversees your second evaluation. The ancient kami studied Naruto with eyes containing molten metal that shifted between gold, silver, and copper hues. Creation defines divinity more fundamentally than destruction, he stated without preamble, voice resembling metal striking metal though perfectly comprehensible. Any entity can destroy, only true divinity creates with purpose beyond mere replication. He gestured toward raw materials arranged beside the special forge, substances resembling conventional elements but radiating fundamental energies suggesting component aspects of reality itself. You will create divine implement demonstrating understanding of both material essence and spiritual purpose. The artifact's effectiveness will establish creation capability consistent with claimed heritage. What specifically should I create? Naruto asked practically. Purpose precedes form, Amasu Mara replied cryptically. Determine necessary function before attempting manifestation. Creation without purpose yields meaningless structure regardless of technical execution. The challenge presented fundamentally different test than Olympian trials. Where Zeus emphasized competitive demonstration against external standards, Takamagahara evaluated internal understanding manifested through externalized creation. The distinction reflected different conceptions of divinity itself, power versus harmony, dominance versus integration. Naruto approached the special forge thoughtfully, examining provided materials with expanding perception. Each subsaint ants represented fundamental cosmic principle, light, darkness, connection, separation, structure, fluidity, raw components awaiting purposeful integration. The white flame provided necessary transforma. Tion medium but required creator's intention for effective conversion. What does he need that he doesn't already possess? Kenji wondered aloud, practical perspective cutting through divine abstraction. The question provided unexpected clarity. What capability would serve his emerging purpose beyond currently available resources? The artifacts provided guidance and dimensional access, while his awakening heritage supplied purification ability against corruption. What remained unaddressed was protection, specifically, defense against void entities that increasingly targeted him directly. With purpose identified, design crystallized through intuitive connection rather than analytical planning. Naruto selected specific material combinations, primary substance resembling solidified light complemented by structural elements suggesting unbreakable connection. Additional components representing adaptive reconfiguration and dimensional anchoring completed required material composition. Under Amasu Mara's silent observation, he began working these materials using techniques never consciously learned yet flowing through muscle memory as though long practiced. The white flame responded to his intention, temperature adjusting automatically to material requirements as he shaped component elements into integrated structure. Amaterasu and Artemis watched with professional interest, their divine perceptions allowing assessment beyond physical crafting into energetic principles being established. Kenji observed with more limited understanding but evident fascination as seemingly impossible materials yielded to Naruto's increasingly confident manipulation. He establishes resonant frequency between material components and personal energy signature, Amaterasu noted with professional assessment. Creating implementation uniquely keyed to individual spiritual pattern, advanced technique even among experienced divine crafters. The object becomes extension of creator rather than separate tool, Artemis observed. Recognizing methodology similar to how her own bow functioned as direct manifestation of divine will rather than conventional weapon. Hours passed in concentrated effort as component materials gradually integrated into cohesive structure. The emerging implement resembled traditional tanto blade in general configuration but incorporated unique modifications reflecting specialized purpose. Its cutting edge consisted not of conventional metal but crystallized light capable of severing interdimensional connections. The hilt incorporated protective aspects that expanded users' natural defensive capabilities while maintaining perfect balance between offensive and defensive potential. Most significantly, the blade's core contained direct connection to Naruto's personal energy signature, essentially functioning as conducted extension of his celestial light rather than separate implement requiring external power source. This connection established two-way resonance, allowing mutual adaptation between wielder and weapon depending on encountered threats. When crafting finally concluded, Naruto presented completed blade for Amaterasu evaluation. The Smith examined the implement with meticulous attention, testing both physical properties and energetic connections with various specialized tools that assessed qualities beyond conventional perception. The Twilight Blade, the Divine Smith finally named it, formal designation establishing its cosmic recognition. Effectively balancing illumination and severance, connection and boundary. Functionally appropriate for interdimensional confrontation with void entities. Technically executed with precision exceeding novice capability. He presented the weapon back to Naruto with formal acknowledgement. Your creation demonstrates understanding beyond mechanical reproduction, establishing harmonic purpose integrated with material form. Takamagahara acknowledges creation aspect of your Harita. GE claim validated through practical demonstration. Amaterasu nodded agreement with this assessment, though her expression remained professionally neutral. 2 evaluations completed successfully. He final trial addresses spiritual rather than material aspects of celestial heritage, specifically, wisdom application rather than power demonstration. When does this third trial begin? Artemis inquired, noting Naruto's evident fatigue following intensive creation work. Dawn tomorrow, Amaterasu decided, practical consideration tempering divine expectation. Spiritual evaluation requires refreshed perception. Appropriate accommodations have been prepared within Takamagahara's diplomatic quarter. They followed Uzume, who had rejoined them following separate duties, toward residential MP Lex integrated within Divine Administrative Center. Unlike Olympus's guest chambers that emphasized ostentatious luxury, Takamagahara provided spaces balanced between aesthetic refinement and practical functionality, beautiful through integrated harmony rather than overwhelming sensory experience. The diplomatic quarter houses representatives from other divine realms during formal exchanges. Zoom explained as they entered building constructed from divine cypress that radiated calming energy. Currently unoccupied except for occasional Norse emissaries investigating similar void manifestations in northern territories. Individual chambers provided personalized environments mysteriously calibrated to occupant preferences despite no prior information exchange. Naruto's quarters featured ocean-facing views reminiscent of Mizuhama's coastal aspect, while interior elements combined familiar fishing village aesthetics with subtle divine refinements that enhanced rather than replaced comfortable associations. How did they know? Kenji wondered, examining his own room containing maritime elements reflecting seafaring background. Divine realms perceive visitor requirements through energy pattern recognition. Artemis explained, finding her chamber incorporating forest elements reflecting wilderness domain. Takamagahara emphasizes hospitality through environmental harmony rather than standardized luxury. Left alone in his quarters, Naruto examined the newly created Twilight Blade with mixture of pride and curiosity. The weapon responded to his touch with subtle energy situation, recognizing its creator through established resonance. Though physically resembling conventional Tonto, its spiritual essence functioned as extension of his own light rather than separate implement. Essentially serving as focused conduit for abilities already possessed rather than external power source. Testing revealed unexpected capabilities beyond original design intention. The blade automatically adjusted configuration based on surrounding energy conditions, expanding defensive aspects when void influence increased or enhancing offensive capacity when confronting direct corruption. This adaptive quality suggested successful integration between material components and spiritual intention underlying its creation. Quiet knock interrupted his examination. Opening chamber door revealed Amaterasu herself rather than expected servant or messenger, the sun goddess's presence immediately intensifying room's ambient energy through natural divine radiance she maintained even in relatively subdued manifestation. Forgive unexpected visitation, She began with formal courtesy that nonetheless conveyed clear authority. Private conversation serves evaluation process more effectively than public exchange. Naruto welcomed her with appropriate respect, golden light briefly illuminating his features through autonomic response to her significantly stronger divine presence. Unlike Zeus's intimidating dominance or Artemis's wilderness intensity, Amaterasu projected perfectly controlled radiance that neither overwhelmed nor diminished surrounding environment, harmony rather than supremacy. Your creation ability exceeds anticipated parameters, she observed, examining the twilight blade with professional assessment rather than suspicious scrutiny. Particularly regarding Riso, Nan's establishment between material components and personal energy signature. Such integration typically requires centuries developing spiritual alignment between crafter and creation. The process felt remembered rather than learned, Naruto admitted, finding direct honesty appropriate given her straightforward approach. As though accessing knowledge previously possessed rather than acquiring new understanding. Amaterasu nodded as though confirming private theory, consistent with celestial reincarnation patterns rather than conventional divine manifestation. The heaven goddess maintained a distinct approach to consciousness continuation across dimensional transitions. This observation provided new perspective on his awakening experience. You suggest my abilities represent reconnect to previous existence rather than merely inherited characteristics. Celestial beings operate through different existential parameters than conventional divinities, Amaterasu explained, her too. Nay, shifting subtly from evaluation to genuine information exchange. Where pantheon gods maintain continuous individual consciousness, celestial entities distribute awareness across multiple simultaneous manifestations. Reconsolidating during cosmic transition points. She studied his reaction to this revelation with evident interest. Your capabilities suggest not merely heritage connection but partial consciousness restoration, accessing previous existences' accumulated knowledge through spiritual resonance rather than complete memory transfer. Which explains intuitive understanding without conscious learning, Naruto realized. Numerous experiences suddenly connecting through this conceptual framework. The awakening represents reconnection to distributed aspects of original celestial consciousness. A working theory consistent with demonstrated capabilities, Amaterasu acknowledged. Though requires verification through additional evaluation, particularly regarding spiritual continuity aspects addressed in tomorrow's final trial. Her formal demeanor softened marginally, divine light fluctuating with what might have been genuine curiosity. Your perspective regarding Ption reversal demonstrates particular insight transcending conventional divine approach. Transformative integration rather than oppositional counterforce suggests fundamentally different relationship to cosmic balance than typically manifested in pantheon divinities. The fisherman's perspective again, Naruto noted with slight smile. Storms aren't enemies to be defeated but natural forces to be navigated. Understanding their patterns allows working with rather than against fundamental reality. Something like approval flickered across Amaterasu's perfect features. An unusually harmonious perspective for one claimed as battle-oriented emperor of light according to Western prophecy interpretation. Takamagahara's historical understanding emphasizes illumination through wisdom rather and dominance through power, significant distinction when evaluating potential cosmic realignment. The conversation continued with increasingly substantive exchange regarding philosophical approaches to cosmic balance, Amaterasu gradually transitioning from formal evaluation to genuine dialogue between distinct but potentially compatible perspectives. Throughout, Naruto noted subtle harmonization between their respective divine energies, her solar radiance and his celestial light occasionally achieving momentary resonance suggesting fundamental compatibility despite superficial differences. Mirror trial tomorrow addresses truth perception beyond physical reality, she eventually explained, returning to official purpose. Where previous evaluations tested capability and creation, final assessment examines wisdom, specifically ability to perceive absolute truth without distortion through personal preference or limitation. Truth often proves more challenging than power, Naruto acknowledged, particularly when it contradicts preferred understanding or established position. Amaterasu studied him with renewed analytical intensity, though without previous skepticism. An observer, Chion suggesting wisdom potential transcending mere power application. Takamagahara values such distinction when evaluating cosmic influence distribution. With evaluation purpose addressed, she depart. TED with formal courtesy that nonetheless contains subtle shift toward collegial rather than hierarchical interaction. The progression suggested evolving assessment from suspicious observation toward potential alliance, partnership rather than subordination in addressing shared cosmic threat. Morning arrived with characteristic Takamagahara harmony, sunlight perfectly balanced between illumination and warmth. Ambient sounds arranged in pleasing acoustic relationship, environmental elements expressing natural beauty through deliberate arrangement suggesting artistic composition rather than random distribution. Uzume arrived to escort their group toward Takamagahara's innermost sanctum, sacred precinct restricted even to most kami except during ceremonial observances. Unlike previous transitions through divine complex, this journey proceeded along elevated pathway providing panoramic views of entire realms, perfect integration between natural landscape and divine construction. The Inna-Our shrine houses Takamagahara's most sacred treasures, Uzume explained as they approached structure of such perfect proportions that it seemed simultaneously massive and perfectly scaled, architectural harmony transcending conventional dimensional relationships. Few visitors receive permission to enter sacred precinct regardless of divine status. Artemis nodded understanding of the exceptional access being granted. Olympus maintains similar restrictions regarding Zeus's lightning vault and Hestia's original hearth flame. Sacred implements transcending individual pantheons require specialized protection against both external threat and internal misapplication. The inner shrine itself defied conventional description, simultaneously appearing as traditional Japanese sanctuary and something far more cosmically fundamental. Its structure incorporated elements representing all creation aspects in perfect harmonic relationship, while internal organization followed sacred geometrical patterns connecting physical manifestation with spiritual resonance. Amaterasu awaited their arrival at the shrine's entrance, accompanied by Tsukuyomi and third figure previously unseen in Council de Lib. Rations, male deity of extraordinary dynamic presence, storm energy crackling around form that seemed barely contained by physical manifestation. Unlike Amaterasu's perfectly controlled radiance, this deity projected barely restrained power suggesting destructive potential balanced against creative necessity. Susanoo no Makoto, Artemis identified quietly. Storm god, brother to Amaterasu and Tsukuyomi. Completing sacred trinity of Takamagahara's ruling kami. His presence suggests ceremonial significance beyond standard evaluation. The storm god studied their approaching group with obvious intensity, focusing particularly on Naruto with expression suggesting challenge rather than welcome. Unlike his divine siblings' carefully maintained diplomatic presentation, Susanoo projected aggressive skepticism without political moderation. The claimed celestial heir approaches sacred ground, he announced with voice like breaking thunderheads, storm energy intensifying around him. Takamaga. Era requires absolute verification before granting access to implements predating Pantheon establishment. Amaterasu addressed her brother with subtle authority expressed through perfect composure rather than confrontational assertion. The council authorized evaluation through established protocol, Susanoo. Previous demonstrations confirmed capability and creation aspects consistent with celestial heritage claim. Previous demonstrations occurred in controlled environments, the storm god countered, lightning crackling between his fingers as emotional intensity translated to physical manifestation. Sacred treasures require absolute confirmation beyond circumstantial evidence or convenient interpretation. Tsukuyomi intervened with characteristic diplomatic precision. Today's final evaluation addresses precisely such confirmation, brother. The mirror itself will reveal absolute truth regarding heritage claims beyond any deity's individual assessment or preference. Susanoo Simi. Temporarily appeased by this logical framework, though storm energy continued swirling around his form as they entered the inner shrine's primary chamber. Unlike external architecture's traditional appearance, this space transcended conventional dimensional limitations, simultaneously expansive and intimately scaled, boundaries suggesting continuation beyond physical perception into spiritual dom. Aims directly connected to creation's fundamental structure. At the chamber's center, elevated upon platform of material resembling solidified light, rested object of profound cosmic significance despite deceptively simple appearance. The mirror of truth, Yata no Kagami in Japanese tradition, appeared as circular reflective surface approximately 1 meter in diameter, its frame constructed from known material that seemed to both absorb and emit light simultaneously. The mirror's surface reflected surroundings with perfect fidelity yet suggested depths beyond physical reflection, layers of real ity visible within its seemingly two-dimensional presentation. The final evaluation requires direct interaction with the mirror, Amaterasu explained, approaching the sacred implement with evident reverence. Where conventional reflections show physical appearance, the mirror of truth reveals absolute reality across all existence layers simultaneously: past, present, potential futures, spiritual essence, cosmic connection. Overwhelming for unprepared perception, Tsukuyomi added with cautionary emphasis. Even established divinities experience disorientation when confronting unfiltered reality beyond conventional dimensional limitations. What specifically does this evaluation test? Naruto asked practically, sensing significant unstated implications behind formal explanation. Truth acceptance, Amaterasu replied with unexpected directness. The mirror reveals absolute reality without compassionate filtering or comfortable distortion. Many entities, divine and mortal alike, reject revealed truth when contradicting preferred self-conception or established position. Celestial beings theoretically transcend such limitation through fundamental integration with cosmic reality beyond individual preference. Susanoo's storm energy intensified as evaluation parameters clarified. If you truly carry celestial essence, the mirror will confirm heritage beyond question, he stated with challenging emphasis. If claim proves exaggerated or manipulated, consequences extend beyond mere disappointment. Understanding crystallized regarding unstated implications, this final test potentially risked not just evaluation failure but fundamental identity destabilization if heritage claims proved inconsistent with absolute reality. Unlike previous trials testing capability and technique, this evaluation addressed fundamental nature beyond performance or acquired skill. I accept evaluation parameters, Naruto stated formally, understanding necessity despite potential risk. Truth serves cosmic balance regardless of personal preference or political convenience. Amaterasu nodded approval at this philosophically appropriate response. Approach the mirror alone, she instructed. Direct perception occurs individually despite potential witnesses to external manifestation. Naruto moved forward while companions remained at chamber perimeter, Artemis watching with carefully controlled concern. Kenji with more openly expressed worry, divine observers with professional assessment calibrated to their respective domains. The mirror's surface shifted subtly as he approached, reflectivity deepening beyond physical parameters into dimensional representation suggesting infinite regression. Standing before the sacred implement, Naruto observed initial reflection appearing conventionally accurate, his physical form rendered with perfect fidelity including recently acquired twilight blade secured at his waist. As connection deepened through proximity, however, the reflection began transforming, physical appearance remaining consistent while additional layers manifested around and through material form. Golden light appeared first, surrounding reflected image with radiance. Similar to his awakened manifestation but substantially intensified, less controlled release than fundamental nature temporarily contained within physical limitations. This luminescence gradually resolved into complex patterns resembling cosmic cartography, connections between realms, dimensional pathways, relationship networks between established pantheons and celestial architecture supporting conventional divine domains. Most significantly, connection lines appeared linking his essence directly to locations throughout cosmic structure, particularly strong resonance with certain implementation points suggesting distributed consciousness aspects Amaterasu had theorized during previous conversation. These connections converged toward specific cosmic coordinates corresponding to the heaven god. Deus's currently inactive primary manifestation, confirming heritage relationship beyond circumstantial evidence or convenient interpretation. The mirror's revelation continued deepening, showing potential developmental pathways branching from current manifestation state. Multiple possible futures appeared simultaneously, variations depending on choices made, alliances formed, challenges confronted. Some pathways led toward manifestation matching prophesied Emperor of Light with unified pantheons under celestial coordination. Others suggested darker possibilities where power corrupted purpose. Void influence infiltrated creation intention. Most fascinating, the mirror revealed relationships between himself and surrounding entities beyond conventional perception. Resonance patterns connect in his essence with Artemis through synchronized light frequencies established during their initial shadow confrontation. Similar potential connections appeared with Amaterasu, currently undeveloped, but showing natural harmonic compatibility between solar divinity and celestial illumination. Unexpected emotional response accompanied these revelations, recognition rather than surprise, confirmation rather than revelation. The mirror showed truth already intuitively understood though not consciously processed, heritage connection functioning through spiritual resonance rather than intellectual comprehension. How long he stood before the mirror remained unclear, temporal perception distorted through multidimensional revelation beyond conventional experience. Eventually, connection gradually diminished as the mirror itself determined appropriate disclosure completed, reflective surface returning to conventional appearance though observer remained fundamentally altered through expanded self-understanding. Turning from the sacred implement, Naruto found divine observers studying him with expressions ranging from Tsukuyomi's analytical assessment to Amaterasu's carefully controlled revelation to Susanoo's surprisingly subdued reconsideration. Most unexpected was Artemis's reaction, the normally composed huntress displaying uncharacteristic emotional response suggesting she had somehow shared aspects of the mirror's revelation despite physical distance. The mirror confirms celestial heritage beyond conventional divine manifestation, Amaterasu announced formally, though subtle. Shifts in her radiant aura suggested deeper personal impact than official declaration indicated. Distributed consciousness aspects reconnecting through awakening catalyst rather than conventional hereditary transmission. Takamagahara acknowledges claim validation through sacred implementation beyond political interpretation or convenient circumstance. Susanoo's storm energy had diminished considerably, suggesting revelation had addressed skepticism more effectively than argumentative debate could achieve. The mirror cannot be deceived nor deceive, he acknowledged with grudging respect replacing previous challenge. If it confirms celestial nature, Takamagahara must recognize accordingly regardless of potential implications for established cosmic hierarchy. The truth serves creation rather than convenience, Tsukuyomi observed with philosophical precision. Acknowledging reality permits appropriate response regardless of preferred interpretation or established position. Kenji approached cautiously, human perception limited regarding cosmic revelations but friendship providing intuitive understanding of significant personal impact. You look different, he observed with characteristic directness. Not physically, but, I don't know, more connected to yourself. The observation demonstrated surprising accuracy despite limited divine perception. The mirror's revelation had indeed established stronger internal integration between awakened capabilities and fundamental nature, connection rather than merely intellectual understanding. The mirror of truth served evaluation purpose beyond expectation, Amaterasu declared, addressing full assembly rather than individuals. Takamagahara acknowledges celestial heritage confirmed through sacred validation. Access to requested artifact granted accordingly with appropriate ceremonial transfer. She approached the platform, golden light gathering around her hands as she addressed the mirror directly through formalized invocation. The sacred implement responded with luminous pulse suggesting conscious acknowledgement rather than merely physical reaction. To universal surprise, the mirror itself separated into two distinct but connected aspects, primary reflective surface remaining on ceremonial platform while secondary implementation approximately 1/4 original size detached from main body. Unexpected, Tsukuyomi commented with rare displayed surprise. The mirror traditionally maintains unified form regardless of ceremonial circumstance. It responds to celestial resonance rather than conventional divine request. Amaterasu realized, accepting the smaller implementation as it floated toward her hands. Creating appropriate manifestation calibrated to awakened heritage requirements while maintaining primary function within Takamagahara. She presented the smaller mirror fragment to Naruto with formal ceremony acknowledging significant cosmic transfer rather than mere object provision. The mirror of truth acknowledges your heritage directly, creating implementation specifically calibrated to your awakening requirements. Takamagahara recognizes appropriate transfer while maintaining sacred connection to original implementation. Accepting the artifact created connection similar to previous celestial implementations, resonance establishing between his essence and the mirror's Seishin that transcended mere physical possession. The fragment integrated with existing artifacts, creating expanded implementation network supporting awakened capabilities through sacred tools specify. Kali designed for celestial application beyond conventional divine utilization. 3 artifacts recovered, Artemis noted with satisfaction tempered by practical assessment. Each providing distinct chi function supporting prophesied purpose, the orb containing memory and guidance, the compass revealing pathways between realms, and now the mirror showing absolute truth beyond conventional perception. 2 remain according to prophetic structure, Amaterasu acknowledged, divine light fluctuating with intellectual consideration rather than emotional response. Takamagahara's historical records S. August additional implementations distributed among remaining major pantheons, specifically Norse and Egyptian domains given historical connection to original celestial architecture. Susano, Apparin, TLY reconciled to heritage confirmation through sacred validation, contributed unexpected practical information. Norse emissaries recently reported similar void manifestations throughout northern territories. Their pantheon actively investigates corruption sources rather than merely addressing symptoms, approach suggesting potential alliance opportunity regarding shared cosmic threat. The Kampa SS indicates northward journey following Japanese implementation recovery, Naruto confirmed, allowing artifact to guide strategic planning rather than merely arbitrary preference. Norse territories contain another artifact according to celestial cartography, though specific location remains indeterminate without closer proximity. Takamagahara will provide appropriate transportation to northern boundaries. Amaterasu decided with formal authority suggesting official pantheon support rather than merely individual accommodation. Additionally, divine communication establishing preliminary diplomatic connection with Asgardian authorities regarding potential alliance against void incursion. You offer substantially more cooperation than Olympus provided, Artemis observed with diplomatic phrasing masking obvious comparison between pantheon responses. Takamagahara values cosmic harmony above individual domain supremacy, Amaterasu replied with philosophical precision rather than political positioning. The void threatens all creation equally regardless of established boundaries or historical rivalries. Practical necessity transcends traditional separation when facing existential threat to fundamental reality structure. Her gaze met Naruto's directly, divine radiance briefly harmonizing with his golden light in unconscious resonance. Additionally, sacred confirmation through the mirror establishes verification beyond political interpretation or convenient circumstance. Takamagahara responds to confirmed reality rather than preferred narrative regardless of implications for established hierarchy. With formal evaluation completed successfully, preparations began immediately for northward journey. Unlike Olympus's effective exile, Takamagahara provided practical support including specialized equipment for traversing dimensional boundaries, communication implementations for maintaining contact with Japanese divine authorities, and most significantly, official diplomatic recognition establishing legitimate interaction framework with additional pantheons they might encounter. Your claim carries Takamagahara's formal acknowledgement, Tsukuyomi explained as documentation transferred through ceremonial exchange. While each pantheon maintains sovereign evaluation rights, our sacred confirmation establishes presumptive legitimacy requiring appropriate diplomatic protocol rather than merely suspicious interrogation. Naruto accepted these credentials with appropriate formal gratitude while recognizing practical significance beyond ceremonial recognition. Unlike departure from Olympus as suspicious outsiders, they would approach Norse territory as acknowledged representatives carrying official status from established pantheon, substantial diplomatic advantage when navigating complex interdivine politics. Kenji, practical as always despite cosmic circumstances, focused on immediate logistical considerations. How exactly do we reach Norse territory from Japan? That's considerable physical distance even without considering divine realm transitions. Takamagahara maintains established pathways connecting major divine domains, Uzume explained, having rejoined their group following communication duties. While pantheons maintain separate governance, cosmic architecture establishes fundamental connections transcending conventional geography or physical limitations. Preparations concluded efficiently, departure scheduled for following morning with divine escort to appropriate transition point connecting Japanese and Norse territories. dimensional pathway rather than conventional physical travel. Before separating for final night in Takamagahara's diplomatic quarters, Amaterasu requested private conversation with Naruto, formal invitation delivered through appropriate channels suggesting official communication rather than merely personal curiosity. They met in contemplative garden designed for diplomatic exchanges requiring privacy without sacrificing appropriate protocol, balance between formality and candid communication characteristic of Takamagahara's approach to cosmic politics. Unlike previous interactions where Sun goddess maintained careful distance emphasizing evaluation rather than cooperation, she now presented herself as potential ally addressing shared concern rather than suspicious authority questioning problematic development. The mirror's confirmation establishes framework for potential cooperation transcending traditional hierarchical constraints. She began without ceremonial preamble, div. In pragmatism replacing political positioning. Takamagahara acknowledges both celestial heritage and practical capability regarding void countermeasures beyond conventional divine implementation. I appreciate forthright acknowledgement, Naruto replied with matching directness. Particularly following Olympian rejection despite similar demonstration. Zeus fears cosmic realignment threatening established authority. Amaterasu observed with analytical precision rather than political criticism. Understandable reaction given governance philosophy emphasizing dominance hierarchy rather than harmonic integration. Different divine domains manifest different approaches to cosmic architecture based on fundamental philosophical orientation. Naruto considered this assessment thoughtfully. Quote, "You suggest pantheon responses reflect governance philosophy rather than merely political calculation." Precisely. Divine light fluctuated around her as intellectual engagement deepened conversation beyond formal exchange. Olympus maintains strict hierarchical structure with Zeus as unquestioned supreme authority. Cosmic realignment necessarily threatens such arrangement regardless of specific implementation details. Takamagahara operates through harmonic consensus rather than dominant individual, philosophical approach more compatible with integrated cosmic architecture transcending individual domain supremacy. This analysis provided valuable framework for understanding different divine realms beyond merely cataloging cultural variations or power distributions. Fundamental philosophy. Cal orientation shaped institutional response to cosmic developments regardless of specific personalities involved. Essential understanding when navigating complex interdivine politics during prophesied unification process. The prophecy specifically references united pantheons beneath celestial throne, Naruto noted, recalling Hestia's exact phrasing. That phrasing naturally threatens Establish head authorities accustomed to absolute domain sovereignty. Unless united implies coordinated cooperation rather than subordinated hierarchy, Amaterasu suggested, offering alternative interpretation. Ion more compatible with diplomatic reality. Historical celestial governance emphasized harmonic integration rather than dominance imposition. Philosophical distinction potentially critical when addressing prophecy implementation. The end. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Remember to subscribe and like this video. See you in the next video.